Don't move! Hands up!
About time too. Call yourself Royal Marines? You're a disgrace. Those boots are filthy. What would happen if the Germans attack now?
Sorry, sir.
In fact, how do you know we're not Germans? Well, answer me.
You don't look like Germans, man.
I don't suppose you know what Dr. Judson's office is. Never mind. This way.
Yes, sir.
Hello and welcome to Who Watches Who, a Doctor Who podcast with me, Matthew, and as always...
Hello, it's Scott.
Hello, it's Scott. This week we are covering part 1 and 2 of the Curse of Fenric. I want to say the Fenric, but it's not, it's just Curse of Fenric, isn't it?
Yes, and I make that mistake all the time as well. It feels like it should be the Fenric, but,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
whatever.
It's just a dude called Fenric. So it is part 1 and 2 of Curse of Fenric. Part 3 and 4 is next week. If you're watching on video, you can see Scott has not got over his fake disease yet. And this episode first aired on October 25th, 1989, which, strangely enough for me, not so strange for Scott, who knew this already, it was a Wednesday. This is the first Doctor Who episode we've covered that's aired on a Wednesday.
No, that is actually incorrect. When we did Resurrection of the Daleks, both of those episodes were on a Wednesday. Well, all 4 episodes, but they were scrunched together, so part 1, part 2 were together on a Wednesday.
I don't remember them being on a Wednesday.
Yes, they were on a Wednesday, my friend.
Ah, it is a Wednesday. Weird. I don't remember that at all. But this one was on a Wednesday. What a weird time for Doctor Who that is. I probably said that on that episode as well. Don't remember that episode at all. Bad episode. The number 1 songs in the US and the UK, big surprise, are not songs I know off the top of my head. See if you know them. I won't make you guess the songs, they're very niche. Miss You Much by Janet Jackson, or Black Box by Ride on Time, or Ride on Time by Black Box for the UK. They're both songs. Okay. They're both...
I know who Janet Jackson is. I don't recognize that song off the top of my head.
Miss You Much.
I guess it's a breakup song.
It's yeah. So Janet Jackson, obviously, sister to some dude called Michael Jackson. And
never heard of him. He doesn't exist.
If you're listening to this song, "Miss You Much," you would be quite easily mistaken into thinking it was a Michael Jackson song. It sounds very similar to the style of music he was creating at this time. Definitely on purpose, because cashing in on that name, you know.
Maybe even ghost written by him. Who knows? Yeah. I don't know enough about Janet Jackson or the Jacksons.
No, the only Jackson I really know is Michael.
Yeah.
Yeah. Probably the more famous one out of those, you know. It was a tight race, but yeah, I think he squeaks the more famouser sibling.
And nowadays more infamous.
Depending on who you ask. You know, some people don't believe it. Macaulay Culkin said everything with him was groovy. You know, those 2 guys on Channel 4 said things were less than groovy. We'll never truly know. But he made some pretty decent music.
He did, certainly.
Yeah, that you can say that. We know that definitively, at least. And he was a big weirdo. Right, in the box office, Scott, can you guess what the number 1... This is US only. The number 1 film in the United States is 1989, 25th of October. We're right around spooky season.
Yeah, the only movies I can think of off the top of my head are like Batman, Ghostbusters 2, Back to the Future Part 2.
You're missing a really obvious classic film from 1980. Like, it is like an all-time great movie. One that you would watch multiple times a year.
No, it's not Groundhog Day. No, what is it?
It is Look Who's Talking.
Oh boy, yes.
The John Travolta talking baby movie.
That's a movie that opens out in like sperm. We watch sperm.
Yes. This was number 1 for 3 weeks at the box office. It made a lot of money and made a lot of sequels. I've not seen this film since I was a kid and had it on possibly VHS, definitely DVD.
Yeah, I've never seen this film. I just know the sequels are Look Who's Talking Now and Look Who's Talking 2
is probably the second one.
First, yes.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
And then Look Who's Talking Now, the third one. In the, masterclass trilogy, honestly, in filmmaking.
Look Who's Talking Now is about the dog talking or something, right? Or is it never a baby? I don't know.
Why not both? Why not? Why not just have everybody talking? I think everybody's talking. Although, if I'm remembering correctly, I think this film didn't do a CGI baby mouth, and they just had like voiceover from like John Travolta or whatever as the baby. So the baby's just looking around like, while John Travolta's there like being like, "Hey, I'm a baby."
But there is nothing worse than creepy CGI baby talk. Do you remember Baby Genius? Those two movies?
No.
That are about baby spies and they're like super geniuses and they're walking around and Christopher Lloyd is...
That feels like a movie that's going to put you on a list if you watch it.
Christopher Lloyd is trying to kidnap them or something, and there's a point where one of the babies does a dance and it's really bad because it's all CGI. It's fantastic. Best movie ever. 10 out of 10.
Yeah, and that's honestly all the news that happened on this day. It is a very empty day in history. But if we turn our eye back to the history of the planet, we'll find it's also a pretty empty day. With 1415, the Battle of Agincourt, or possibly Agincourt, Henry V's forces defeat a larger French army, and the longbow defeats the armored knight. So that's cool. Knights battling each other. Henry V, yeah. In 1854, the infamous Charge of the Light Brigade during the Battle of Balaclava in the Crimean War results in over 100 killed. I recognize the title, Charge of the Light Brigade. I think it's a film now.
Okay.
Or I say now, it was like a film from like the 60s that my brothers watched. In 1962, the U.S. ambassador to the UN, Adlai Stevenson, demanded that the USSR United Nations representative Zornin answer regarding the Cuban missile bases, saying that I am prepared to wait for my answer until hell freezes over. So this is peak Cold War, and they're like, you're keeping nukes in Cuba, aren't you? And Russia's like, haha, no comment. And, everyone's a bit stressed out.
Very appropriate for this episode, I would say.
Yeah, with Russia being bad. And then if we, if we flash forward to 1971, we're back at the UN, and this is playing into something that's going to affect modern politics, definitely in the next few years, I would suspect. The United Nations votes to expel the Chinese nationalist-ruled Taiwan and admit the Communist People's Republic of China into the United Nations instead. So Taiwan was in the UN, China wasn't. And then China went, hey, Taiwan's not a country, let us in, ha ha ha. And the UN went, you're right, you make more money than Taiwan. And they kicked Taiwan out and put China in the UN. And China, ever since then, has been trying to take Taiwan back, whereas Taiwan is definitely an independent country. Our podcast is now blocked in China. Speaking of China, in 2017, the Chinese president Xi Jinping, otherwise known as Winnie the Pooh, unveils his new ruling council in the Great Hall of the People. None of the 5 people that are unveiled in this great council are young enough to succeed him, guaranteeing that he is going to stay in power for even longer. I think he's basically made it law at this point that he's in charge until he dies. Very similar to what Putin's did. Which is, China seems like a fun place to be.
And Russia, yeah, both of them. Wonderful places.
They've really figured out how to have good times.
And like the 2 biggest countries in the world, so I guess we must be right.
Yeah. Everybody's happy, nothing goes wrong. They were like, let's just chill out and have a good time. No inflated egos here. No power hungry, warmongering folk. Wanting to have a slightly larger colored in map than we did the previous year. None of that nonsense. No, they're just super chill and they just help people. Great places. Great places to be. Yeah. That is all the information I've got, Scott. So let's hear a bit about Curse of Fenric. I almost said the Fenric. It's a bad title.
So yeah, as we said, this episode aired on a Wednesday, which kind of led to its cancellation because it was right against like one of the biggest soap operas of all time, Coronation Street.
Never heard of it.
You know, at this point, Coronation Street was getting like 20 million viewers on average, and Doctor Who only got like 4.5 million on its best day, which isn't great ratings, and it was for a reason because Michael Grade really hated Doctor Who and wanted it to go away. And, you know, he got his wish. It went away for 16 years soon after this episode, because this is a penultimate episode of classic Doctor Who. There's only going to be one more story after this, which is kind of depressing, really, because I think season 26 is where it began to get things right.
Season 26 is when the show starts to get good. Yeah.
Because, you know, we covered some 80s episodes, like Resurrection of the Daleks, as we've mentioned before. That episode was okay, but there's too much going on.
There's moments.
Yeah, and I would say that's like most of the 80s Doctor Who.
It's most of classic Who. It's most of classic. Yeah.
But yeah, season 26 was where it gets it right, and it was sad to see it go downhill. You know, when it was cancelled. So Curse of Fenric was the first produced episode, and it was meant to air first, but then they thought, oh yeah, we're going to air this third instead because it's October, and appropriately this is about underwater vampires, and it's like, yeah, this is a perfect time to air it. Perfect. So the writer of this episode is Ian Briggs, who wrote Dragonfire, the episode where he introduced Ace.
Any relation to Nicholas?
No, unfortunately not. I wish though. That'd be great.
That'd be a fun Doctor Who.
Because I feel
family.
Like if Ian Briggs was Nicholas Briggs' uncle or something, Ian Briggs could have come back for Big Finish or something like that.
Yeah,
That would have been fantastic.
Assuming he's alive.
He is still alive.
Okay.
and he also looks surprisingly young, which is when I watched the DVD special features, which are filmed in like 2019, he looks surprisingly young. Like everyone from like Andrew Cartmel, the script editor at the time, also looks quite young, which is kind of weird. I expected them to be old men, but you know.
I mean, it was only 30 years ago. You know, if they wrote it in their 30s, they're just going to be like 60 years old.
It feels like a lifetime ago because I wasn't born. But yeah, John Nathan Turner, who was, of course, the show's producer at the time, and still the longest serving producer of Doctor Who. He was on the show for like 10 years. He wasn't fond of Ian, and Andrew Cartmel, the script editor, had to try and convince John that Ian should come back to write another script. So Ian Briggs wrote an episode of The Bill, Casualty, and then he left TV altogether to just do theatre work, which fair on him.
Yeah.
The director of this story is Nicholas Mallet, and he was a production manager on Blake 7, which also has a Doctor Who link because it was created by Terry Nation. Mm-hmm. He directed 3 Doctor Who stories: The Mysterious Planet, Paradise Towers, and also obviously Fenric. He also directed episodes of Crossroads, Children's Wards, and The Bill before dying in 1997 at the age of 51, which is way too young.
That's another Doctor Who writer dying really young.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same with John Nathan Turner. He was only in his 50s. He died in like 2003.
Yeah, and Douglas Adams.
Yeah.
He also died in his 50s in I think the early 2000s as well. There was a curse. There was a curse. A curse of Fenric, perhaps.
So as we said, the director of the entire episode was Nicholas Mallet, but the underwater shots and the atmospheric shots were directed by John Nathan Turner, and I think like they're the best shots of the episode, especially on the Blu-ray where it's all upscaled and it looks really fucking good. The original titles of this episode were going to be Wolf Time and the Wolves of Fenric, which John Nathan Turner basically turned around and said, these titles don't make sense because the wolf aspect doesn't come into the later episodes. So the episode was then called The Curse of Fenric.
Yeah, it's fair enough. I mean, Curse of Fenric's still a pretty lame title. Again, because Fenric doesn't... I assume it's a name. It's like a name of some Norse dude or something, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, but the Fenric just sounds nice, whereas Fenric sounds like it's missing that plural that you get with the, you know?
Yeah, that's a good jumping off point, because Fenric isn't anything to do with Norse mythology, but Fenrir Fenrir is, which is just one letter off.
Wow.
So Fenrir is a monstrous wolf of Norse mythology. He was the son of a demonic god, Loki, and giantress Agerboda.
If you don't know anything about Norse mythology, there's a really, really good book written by Neil Gaiman, where he's gone back and retold a bunch of Norse mythology stories, written, in a more understandable way. And the book's just called Norse Mythology by Neil Gaiman. I read it in like one sitting, and basically Loki has a lot of kids. Dude sleeps around. Yeah.
Yeah, that's all we need in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. More horny Loki, he's
although,
already fucking...
To be fair, quite often he's like turning into an animal and sleeping with other animals and making weird hybrid people. Yeah.
Yeah, Loki's a weird dude, but fearing Fenrir's strength and knowing that only evil could be expected from him, the gods bound him with a magical chain made of the sound of a cat's footsteps, the beard of a woman, the breath of fish, and other occult elements. It was said he would be released from his chains on Ragnarok Day, and the movie for Ragnarok actually has Fenrir as the wolf. Which is... So yeah, Ian Briggs wrote Curse of Fenric after a trip to Sweden where he became interested in ancients, runestones, and Vikings culture. He proposed the episode should be set in Scandinavia, but that was rejected because a British coastal setting was easier to achieve. It's classic Doctor Who, they didn't have a budget to go overseas.
Cheapest
Makes
option
perfect
wins.
sense.
Cheapest option wins every time.
So the script editor Andrew Cartmel wanted the story to be set in the past. Briggs suggested 1970s, but that was thought to be too recent, and then Briggs then thought of World War II and the Blitz, eventually settling on the idea of an army camp instead, and thus Fenric became the only World War II classic story in Doctor Who, which is wild to think about because one of our most famous villains are the Daleks, based off of the Nazis.
Yeah, that is honestly surprising that it's the only story set in World War II from classic Who. That's wild. That's such a big... Maybe they just thought it was too recent.
Yeah, that's probably it. And also, a lot of viewers probably went through the war and didn't want to watch anything to do with the war. We were fine with instead watching, Nazis like Daleks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Make it a metaphor more than right on the nose. And nowadays the Doctor sides with the Nazis, so it's weird.
Oh God! Yeah, we don't talk about that. Also, yeah. So the only World War II story, and it's also 26 seasons in. That's wild to think about.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, when the script was completed, everyone involved realized the story was overwritten, and there were talks about extending it to fit 5 parts, which. Yeah, you don't like 5-parters.
Nope, I barely like 4-parters. As soon as you break that 4-part, 4-part maximum story, then you've got filler episodes that don't need to be there. You've got episodes as glaringly as the one that we covered with the Sarah Jane's Farewell one, where
Sarah Jane's Farewell wasn't even. It was 4 parts for that episode.
Oh, yeah, I know. That's how bad that was, where she's just walking around the nuclear facility for an episode in silence.
Yeah.
When you start doing stuff like that, it's like, you didn't have enough script, did you?
And whereas here there's too much script, there's too much going on in this episode, I reckon. But, so they realized that all the episodes overran, and it had to be trimmed. 12 minutes of footage were cut altogether, so we couldn't do a new episode, because obviously it would only be a half episode.
Just make someone walk around for 10 minutes.
So Ian Briggs was heartbroken at the final 4 episodes, feeling that they didn't represent his proper script in full. However, there is 2 extended cuts. 6 minutes was added in for the 1991 VHS, and John Nathan Turner was adamant about editing his way, and he basically locked himself in an editing suite and just, added the extra 6 minutes, which still didn't include enough to make the story make sense. So in 2003, the DVD came out, and we added the 12 minutes cut from the broadcast that gave the story a more cohesive narrative. And it was in dedication to director Nicholas Mallet and John Nathan Turner, who had just died a few months prior to its release, so it's really sad.
It's interesting that, they had to cut it to make it fit And then, they're going through all the footage, and they're like, oh my god, where are we going to find 12 minutes to cut this down? Oh, you see this bit where they explain the plot? Get rid of it. That's the point we have to... Not any of the other stuff, people bumbling around, or, this awkward pause here, or this bit of dialogue that's not really needed, cutting a few seconds out or a few minutes out of different scenes. Just this 12-minute exposition that tells the entire story. That's the one that's what we're cutting out. That seems like such a weird choice.
I think it becomes more apparent in like episode 4, where it's like suddenly people are teleporting all over the place without explanation. There's some exposition not given on screen where you're like, what the fuck is going on here? But we'll get to the cut scenes and all that. It wasn't too bad, but yeah, it felt like it needed an extended cut. And also the Blu-ray transfer is amazing if you ever get a chance to watch it. They do excellent work on that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's modern enough that the tapes will be pretty easy to they will be a better quality than the tapes that were used in the 60s. 20 years of advancement.
Jesus, yeah, it's insane to think about how long Doctor Who was on there for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, hang on, 1989. Yeah, so Star Trek: The Next Generation was in its 3rd season when this last season of Doctor Who was out. Like,
the thing is, Star Trek: The Next Generation, I haven't seen a single episode of it, but feels so much newer than that because obviously the Doctor Who was always behind the times in terms of how to format a story and all that. I always think it should have gone to like 45 minutes episodes in the 90s or the 80s.
Yeah,
sorry.
which is what Star Trek did. Star Trek's 45-minute episodes. And it's a mixed bag of quality with any sci-fi show, but more often than not, it's a pretty amazingly paced episode. It leads to some really compelling writing and stuff. You're right. We should do a Star Trek podcast instead.
Oh yeah, especially where I know nothing about Star Trek.
Yeah, our roles would be reversed.
So it became clear earlier on that recording on location would benefit the story instead, as using a real army camp would make more sense than building a studio to look like one. And
cheapest option wins again.
Yeah, the Curse of Fenric became one of the only stories in Classic Who to not use studio, which is kind of insane to think about because obviously we've covered Classic Doctor Who before, and it's always so obvious whenever they cut back to a studio rather than location.
I think it's a double-edged sword in this case because the actual, I say set, it's not, we just said it's not set, but the locations they're at look pretty great, but the audio, you can tell they're in a room that was not designed for recording audio in because it is bad a lot of the time, or too quiet, or really echoey. The acoustics just aren't great.
I think a lot of that comes down to budget, folks. I'm looking at certain shots of this episode or story, and it feels like it's just an amateur student film or whatever. Like there's a
way that this is shot, and I think it's just the cameras they're using. K9 and Company, that is the vibe. It looks like K9 and Company to me. It's shot. There's some shots that are better than K9 and Company, but the whole color palette, the people moving in and out of rooms, just the way it's shot is K9 and Company.
Speaking of color palette, the color palette is so much improved on the Blu-ray. Like they really worked their asses off to make it look great. And again, the underwater shots just look beautiful and blue, and you should watch it. Get this Blu-ray, man.
But there's so many Doctor Who Blu-rays, right? And I don't want to spend all that money on them.
So yeah, obviously this episode was one of the most complex and ambitious location schedules in Doctor Who at the time. They had 2 weeks of filming in Kent and East Sussex, and a week in Lulworth Coast for the coastal scenes. And this was a 19-day shoot. And we basically shot like a feature-length movie, which is rough, and that's why a lot of it looks amateurish. But I think the crew were doing their best, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, all interiors were found or constructed on location, and we had to fight strong cold winds, snow, rain, and really bad mud because this is British weather we're talking about. It will be snowing 1 minute and hot weather the next minute. That's Britain for you.
Yeah.
So yeah, of course, we're covering this episode. Well, we didn't choose this episode, but Ace is in this episode.
Yes.
And she's going to be back in the Centenary special.
In the Centenary.
And Ace is an episode... Ace is a character.
She's a whole episode.
Ace is a character who's very beloved in Doctor Who. And if you want to compare it, in 1960s, the companions were often split up from the Doctor to create subplots, basically told, oh yeah, go make a cup of tea over here for this person, and oh yeah, you need to lie down because a Dalek plunger hit you on the head. Sorry, Tegan.
Yeah, there's that actually was my favorite moment. I'm sure we'll talk about it when it comes up, but it was my favorite moment in this. I think it's the first episode or maybe the second episode when the Doctor is like finding out about the curse, and he's like, "Oh no, but I've left Ace there. She's gonna be." Then Ace just walks in like, "Hi, Doc." Like, yeah, no, I'm here for the adventure. I'm not getting abandoned anywhere.
Yeah, that's my favorite part about Ace. She's just such a smart companion. And in the late 80s, the story structure changed to have companions always be by the Doctor's side in order to develop a relationship, which, modern Doctor Who does that in...
Yeah.
Not Chibnall, but, Russell T. Davies and Moffat did a lot of companion work like that. Have a relationship between the Doctor and his companion. Mm-hmm. That's how you should do it. But yeah, a little bit of backstory on Ace because it's important to this episode. Ace was a young girl who was caught in a time storm, and she ended up on a planet called Ice World, and she became basically like a diner servant, and it was a shit story, and I have no reason to go back to that story. But yeah, she was at modern Earth girl. She was from the 80s.
Okay.
So not modern anymore.
Yeah, okay, but she's from the 80s and teleported to an alien planet.
Yeah, and then she obviously became companion to the Doctor, and they travelled around and stuff. So yeah, one thing about Ace is because she was being constantly educated by the Doctor, and this was Sylvester McCoy's idea, because he liked the idea of having Sophie Aldridge to deliver some of the complicated lines for him. But it also gives Ace an interesting character arc, where she's a rebellious teenager, and she slowly grows into like a mature woman. And that's, like one of the first companions to actually have a character arc in Classic Who, which is wild to think about. Who'd have thought that character arcs are important,
Get rid of them, I say. Right, the only arc you need, can you ride a bike? Yes, no, and then by the end of it, maybe you can. Done.
So this episode, Curse of Fenric, kind of is a middle point of a trilogy called the Ace Trilogy, where Ace gets a load of focus. The episode before, Ghostlight, explores her lashing out. Her friend was a victim of a racial attack, and she burned down a Victorian home to just lash out. And this Victorian home kind of got haunted by a ghost, and that's why she was angry enough to burn it down, because the ghost kind of possessed her.
Yeah, that checks out. Yeah.
But exploring the companion not being perfect, she's angry at the world, lashing out like that. That's some interesting character arc stuff. And of course, Curse of Fenric explores her in a new way in terms of like sexuality in her past, which we'll come to next week. The episode after this was Survival, and it's about her wanting to be independent, and also it explores her sexuality because there's some gay subtext there, which had to be subtext because it's the 1980s, and you couldn't have gay characters on television for children, which is kind of I would like to say, oh, thank God times have changed, but look at Disney and they're doing the same thing. They're just cutting out gay scenes, which is not
it's
great.
interesting. It's interesting with Disney. They're a massive corporation. They've been cutting out gay scenes for years at this point. They have a 10-minute gay scene here. Good, we can cut that out for the Chinese version. Who cares? Ha ha ha. But Doctor Strange has just been banned in Egypt and stuff because there's a gay scene that they're refusing to cut out, which is like okay, Disney, well done for not doing it, but why for this one now?
They're only refusing it because they don't want any more backlash because of obviously the whole "Don't Say Gay" bill in Florida and that whole debacle with Disney. They just want to look good now. So.
Yeah.
It's do as little as possible and look as good as possible. That's what we're doing.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're a giant, monopoly business. Their goal is money. They don't have morals. It's whatever moral gets them the most money is the one that they're going to follow.
But yeah, back to Ace. Ace is like one of my favorite companions, Instead of being like a screaming girl who just wants help from the doctor at every turn, she's like, oh, I'm going to blow shit up and I'm smart enough to know what I'm doing here. I'm just going to blow shit up and that's what my character is. I'm just like that. I love Ace.
I've only seen the first 2 episodes of this story so far, so I have no strong feelings towards Ace one way or another, because I have not been exposed to her long enough to form a coherent opinion. But she's fun, and I like the back and forth with the doctor. They have fun chemistry.
So the last 2 episodes of this story gives her so much character, and I am excited to see whether or not your opinions lean more towards liking her, because she's my favorite companion, hands down, probably.
Okay.
But yeah, that's all the Curse of Fenric notes. Shall we begin episode 1?
We shall jump into episode 1.
Hey, Vicar.
Yes?
Shouldn't leave all this silverware lying around. You're wide open.
They're superstitious people in these parts. Too afraid of the old Viking curse to break in here.
Curse?
This church is built on old Viking graves. They say evil was once buried here.
Okay, so in classic Who style, the episode just starts with the intro. We get no cold open to bleed us in or anything like that. And this is an interesting intro, I think. So it's very late 80s.
Yep.
It's very bad CGI. So, if we're comparing this to Star Trek, which, Star Trek is a much bigger budget, whatever, the Star Trek Next Generation intro is iconic. We're flying through space, you've got this Enterprise zipping by and planets are going by, big orchestral music's playing, and it looks amazing. Even to this day, it looks amazing, because it was done with miniatures, with CGI, but, pretty decently done. This, however, is a particle effect trying to get away as a galaxy. It's just this blue, very pixely thing. And then a marble shows up, and that marble has the TARDIS in it. A very CGI TARDIS as well. All of this looks like a cartoon. Like a bad but ugly Martians.
Yes, I know exactly what you mean.
the great show. But the TARDIS shows up in a marble, and then it kind of falls into the galaxy, and then the Doctor's face shows up in classic Who style. But is it just weird? They've got like a filter on him to make him look way younger than he actually is.
So his face is actually painted silver, and don't ask me why it's painted silver. I don't know why it's painted silver.
It's a future, innit? And then he like winks.
Yeah.
But like he doesn't properly wink. It's like they fade transition to a photo of him winking, then fade back. Rather than having a video of him winking, it's two still images that they've crossfaded, and it looks terrible. Then he explodes. And into like a whiteness of stars, and we get the logo Doctor Who forming, and it's
a signature.
Yeah, I know it's the signature for Doctor, and then Who is in giant metallic lettering. It's I think the best logo the show's ever had, hands down.
No, certainly not. I'm not a big fan of this intro in general. It just also the CGI comets, I guess they look kind of like paper.
Yeah,
look, like if you scrunch up a bit of paper and just throw it across the room.
The intro song as well. It starts off, I think, really bad. It's really computery and really just like basically no tune to it. Then it kicks in and it's like, oh wait, no, this is Doctor Who. Okay, I can find the Doctor Who note suddenly. But I think it's my least favorite Doctor Who theme song as well.
I'm fine with the theme, mainly because it has the middle eight. I love the middle eight, so anything to do with middle eight, I'm all here for.
Yeah, easy please, some people.
And if you don't know what middle eight is, insert a clip of Peter Capaldi explaining Middle Eight.
It's the bit that goes. Do 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 etc. Get the middle eight back.
So the episode opens with some men pushing or sailing on a wee World War II floaty boat thing through some misty, smoky water. And it looks quite nice, and we're cutting into the ocean every now and then. We see the head of a Viking ship, and there was a cool shot where you're seeing the boats pass over from underneath, so it's like the silhouette of the boat above. I like that shot.
Yeah, the underwater shots look excellent, and you can tell they're really trying to make it look cinematic.
Mm-hmm. The TARDIS appears. And the Doctor and Ace step out, and they're like, yes, look, World War II uniforms, ha ha ha, you don't look like an idiot, Ace, good job, because she's dressed in appropriate garb for the era, which was surprising to me, because every clip I've seen of Ace, she's like just wearing her regular like bomber jacket.
Yeah, the thing about John Nathan Turner is he really loved the companions and the doctors to always wear the same outfit constantly. So that's why whenever you look at a clip of the 1980s, everyone's wearing the same outfit. I don't know what he liked about it. I guess just to make it easier for the kids to tell who's who. But yeah, this is one of those rare times where a companion actually wore something else.
Yeah, and it feels wrong.
And also, the Doctor making fun of what Ace is wearing was unscripted. It was just Sylvester McCoy making fun of Sophie.
Right. We get more of the World War II guys, and they start speaking in not English, which means the TARDIS auto-translator must be broken. What's going on there? But they are speaking in Russian, I think it is.
Yeah, they're speaking in Russian. The script had the Russians originally speak English without any reference to subtitles, but they've suddenly realized, we should probably start off with them speaking Russian. And Tomek Bork, who was one of the he played the captain, actually translated the script for them. He was actually Polish, and the rest of the Russians were actually Polish, which were kind of distressing for Polish to play Russians for obvious reasons.
But they do a terrible job anyway. I don't think they sound Russian at all. I think these are bad actors for the most part. Yeah, they stood out to me as like, that's not a convincing accent. Even if they are Polish, it doesn't sound Russian. But the Doctor and Ace are, walking on down. There's, some fun back and forth between them still, where Ace is like, I want to go rock climbing, and the Doctor's like, you're dressed like an idiot, ha ha ha.
There's also a point where Ace is like, if this is a naval camp, I'm Lord Nelson, and you should recognize the name Lord Nelson because he was referenced in The Sea Devils. The Doctor said he was best mates with him, which is our connection.
I remember every line of dialogue from The Sea Devils. It was so compelling.
We can't get away from the Sea Devils. There's so much Sea Devils.
We can't get away from the ocean right now. We've covered so many water-themed episodes. Yeah. But the Doctor and they get surrounded by British Army soldiers, and they're like, oh my god, how did you get on here? Who are you? And the Doctor immediately snaps into, it's about time your boots are dirty, where is this? Show me to this commander person. Oh, never mind, I'll do it myself. Just immediately taking charge of the situation and controlling the conversation, which I very much enjoyed.
Yeah, when I started this episode a few weeks ago, I immediately texted you, Sylvester McCoy is off to a great start in this story. He's probably one of my favorite Doctors, but there's so much Doctors I can't pick my favorites anymore. It's so difficult.
Yeah, every Doctor is good and brings something different to the role.
Yeah. So in the extended cut of this episode, we'd keep cutting to British soldiers waiting for the Russians, but instead they watch the Doctor and Ace. They realise they aren't the Russians when we catch on that one of them is a girl, so we are about to shoot them if we didn't realise
there's
one
no
of them
girls
was a
in
girl.
Russia. No girls in Russia. In the meantime, the Russian soldiers are deciding that they have to speak English from now on, to maintain their cover.
Yeah, I'm not sure why we want to speak English now, because it would make them.
I guess if
harder
somebody overhears.
I guess.
But I feel like the accent's a dead giveaway.
Yeah.
Like,
And
and
their uniforms.
yeah, yeah. But one of their crew members is like dead, isn't, or dying. He's been attacked by something with nobody seeing, which I was confused by. When did he get attacked exactly?
I'm not really sure, to be honest.
Because they all got off the boat and then they were like, "Okay, speak English." Wait, this dude's hurt. Oh no, what happened? I was like, did I miss a scene? You know, what happened here?
I don't think it's explained really in the actual cuts as well, so I don't know. But yeah, he got hurt.
Yeah, he got hurt, and that's a recurring theme with these Russian guys is getting hurt. And this dude specifically, he comes back later on. But the doctor barges in to this Professor Science dude's house, and we will see what happens, because I haven't watched any further yet. So we get a very fun scene with the doctor and this professor guy. I forget his name. He's in a wheelchair.
Dr. Judson.
Yeah, Judson. Where he comes in and he's very rude to the doctor. He's very shouty, and his nurse is like, "Hey, calm down your blood pressure." And he goes, "Shut up, Crane."
Do you recognize the nurse?
No, I barely see her face. Should I recognize her?
Well, she will be in Doctor Who later in another vampire-esque story. She's in Smith and Jones as the lady who sucks blood.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she's the old lady that tries to kill the Doctor at one point, and then Martha saves her.
I remember, that's the first episode with the Jadoon. And I remember that episode terrifying me as a kid, because the idea of drinking blood from a straw, like it was gross. Good episode. But this, the Doctor impresses the Professor guy by understanding what the prisoner's dilemma is and understanding the logic gate problems and the code breaking ideas that this guy's doing, which basically tells you everything that you need to know about this professor. He's working on how to break Russian codes.
Yeah. This Doctor is based on Alan Turing, which is obvious. And Alan Turing is, of course, a gay man in World War II, and Dr. Judson was supposed to be gay, but again, BBC rules meant that his gayness couldn't be on screen, which is a shame. And instead, they're like, oh yeah, in the script, he was supposed to be frustrated about his sexual identity, and we were like, okay, how about he's frustrated about his disability and treated like an invalid? And that's why it got changed, which is a fair enough thing.
Yeah. It's a shame, but them's were the times, I suppose. In the meantime, the Doctor is typing up on a typewriter, and you also find out the Doctor's ambidextrous when he asks for 2 pens and starts signing off with 2 hands, which was a nice little detail, I thought.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and Ace is impressing the Professor by understanding what logic is as well, and understanding what computers are, because obviously this dude is, this is top secret information. Computers are massive and fill rooms, and not most regular folk don't understand what a computer is. And she's like, yeah, no, I got taught this stuff in school, which is interesting. I don't think they teach logic gates in school anymore, or how the internal workings of a computer. I sure wasn't taught it when I was at school.
Yeah, neither was I. I presume it's more of an 80s thing when
when computers were more of a thing that you have to learn rather than just a tool you use in everyday life.
Yeah. A tool you carry around in your pocket at all times.
Yeah. And then an army soldier bursts in, and he's like, these guys are unauthorized. And the Doctor's like, look at this paper that I definitely didn't just type up. You'll see that it's from the Prime Minister and need to know basis, blah blah blah. And the guy's like, my bad. And the Doctor's like, hey, no bother. And that's basically the end of the scene. It's a really fun scene, I think. It introduces us to an important character to the plot. It goes on for long, but I was never bored watching it.
Yeah, I think Sylvester McCoy's energy is just so quick-paced, and he's like, oh yeah, this is what I'm doing now, I'm doing this now. And I really love watching Sylvester McCoy. He's a natural. And of course, the scene ends with being like, oh yeah, the Doctor's like, I want to go to my bunker now and just rest for the night, even if it was daylight outside, but never mind.
That was the thing. This is a very bright episode. Everything is shot in the daytime. There's it's never dark, and I remember thinking that it was very, especially in the next episode when you're getting into the more horror elements, when the vampire lady starts it's just broad daylight, and I'm like, this isn't very spooky, you know.
Yeah, but if you remember, it's 1989, and the equipment for filming on isn't equipped to shoot in the darkness that well, and also TV sets in the 1980s weren't that great for dark scenes.
They can do stuff in Star Trek. Oh, you know, Star Trek's out at this point. This is a pure Doctor Who problem. This is a Doctor Who budget-y problem, not a technology problem. This is a Doctor Who being cheap problem.
And also, this was shot in 19 days, less than 3 weeks, which I don't envy the crew at all.
Yeah. We get a whole heap of stuff happening as we cut back to the Russian soldiers, and they're like, okay, we need somebody to go do a lookout on the beach. Hey, you random dude, you can do it. And he went, by myself? And the guy goes, yeah. You know, one of our guys mysteriously died, but that doesn't bother me. I'm sure you won't mysteriously die as well, and everything will be okay. And that guy's like, oh, well, I guess I'm not going to die then. Oh, what's this, a red shirt? Yeah, I'll put that on.
Yeah, it's classic horror movie tropes where it's like, oh, yeah, I'm putting everyone in danger, even though there's a clear danger here. But
yeah, there's a clear danger, but I don't care. I'm just not paying attention to that danger. Yeah, and in the meantime, while that's happening, the Doctor and Ace are going to their bed. Ace very rudely shouts, as they walk in. Well, I don't understand. She's just a bit not thinking when she comes into the room shouting in these bunk beds, and the Doctor tells her to shut up, basically, to be less quiet, and they climb into bed. Ace asks if she can go rock climbing. The Doctor's like, shut up. And, I asked this when we were watching it, but obviously for podcast reasons. Why did they choose to sleep? I mean, obviously we see the Doctor isn't going to sleep, but why did they choose to come? Oh, let's go see this World War II base. Oh, we're here for 5 minutes. Let's go to bed. Rather than just sleep on the TARDIS for 5 minutes. Or time travel 5 minutes into the future when they don't need to sleep.
Yeah, the weird thing is it suddenly becomes nighttime, and there's no explanation as to why it's suddenly nighttime, because we've seen before we saw the Doctor was in
middle
daytime.
of the day. Yeah, middle of the day.
But,
then it's artificial darkness where it's shot in the middle of the day and they've just turned the brightness down. But
as to the reason why they're not inside the TARDIS in this episode to sleep or whatever is because the TARDIS set was falling apart. they couldn't really use it because the walls were shattering apart. It was not a good time for Doctor Who,
That's a shame. That is a shame.
Sorry, in the Blu-ray, in the extended cut, this scene was extended, and it ended with the Doctor going out to investigate, so you're not suddenly like, oh, why is the Doctor here now?
He just teleported. He's just teleported here.
And then also Ace is still in the room, and she hears the cry of a baby in another room, which comes into play later.
Yes. The Russian guy walking on the beach, it finds like an envelope just sitting on the stones, which is just an interesting thing to find, and it's got a picture of the professor guy, Judson, in it, and he looks at it. What?
I'm proud of you for remembering the name.
Yeah, it's because it sounded like Jug, and so I just remembered Jug. And he takes that and it pulls it away, and we cut then to we cut to just a guard walking and the Doctor teleporting in front of his face and going, eyes are everywhere, which I genuinely really liked. I love the Doctor being a total weirdo to some guy.
Yeah, that's Sebastian McCoy to a T. He's always been weird around people.
Yeah, it was really good. And we see various shots of the Russian soldiers like sneaking around and spying on the base, and then we see something. We're in the perspective of a monster sneaking up on the Russian soldier, which I thought was a pretty fun shot. There was this CG effect on the camera to make it look more like an eyeball, which I thought was fairly effective.
Yeah, classic point of view perspective in classic Who is always being used, and it's always effective.
Mm-hmm. And I think they get attacked, and then it cuts to the morning time outside the church. I don't think I've missed out any scenes. It's pretty quick paced at this point. We're coming up to about a quarter way into this episode, and the plot is slowly getting moved. We're cutting about like crazy in classic Who style. Every shot is lasting like a second or 2 seconds because they're trying to quickly get this plot out. In 20 minutes time.
Yeah, but I would rather take this over the Sea Devils, which moves at a slug's pace.
Yeah. Yeah.
this feels more like Classic Who, where it doesn't quite gets it breath. So I feel a lot of modern Who kind of rushes about place.
It's interesting because, with Classic Who, it's one or the other. It's either it's way too slow or it's way too fast. If we think to like Sea Devils, where it's way too slow, or if we go to the Demons, where scenes were lasting like a second and then cutting away to another scene that also lasted a second. It's finding the pacing for Classic Who is something they always struggled with, which is
same. I feel exact same thing with Modern Who. I feel like the 45-minute format doesn't quite work a lot of the time because we're rushing about too much.
Nah, I don't have that issue. I think Modern Who is paced almost perfectly every time. I'm never finding an episode too long or too boring. Maybe there's one or two that are too long, but most of the time throughout the show, I'm entertained, and like 45 minutes is a good adventure.
I mean, 45 minutes is in it, or some episodes that go by way too quickly, and suddenly there's not enough time to explain the plot or whatever.
Yeah. So the we open up to a church in the day, and we get our introduction to the annoying old lady for this story. You can't have a Classic Who story without an annoying old person. This time it is the old lady telling off the vicar for daring to suggest that the war isn't just good guys and bad guys, and that there's shades of grey. No. We are the good guys, and they are the bad guys. Which, in World War II, okay, you could make that argument more convincingly than any other war, probably. But there's shades of grey everywhere.
And as a very deep, complex issue for Classic Who to deal with, I think it's really interesting that it's here in this episode. So the priest is played by Nicholas Parsons, who was born in 1923 and just recently died in 2020 at the age of 97. At the time, he was known as a game show host, Tale of a Century, so it was very odd to see him in Doctor Who. The director cast him after seeing him in a pantomime play playing a dame, which is, again, another odd choice. But the reason he was cast was because he showed a lot of empathy with the children at the end of the play, and that's why he's the empathetic priest, you know?
Yeah.
Really interesting casting, though.
Yeah. The doctor shows up, and he's like, hey, I'm looking for the professor guy. And the priest's like, oh, he's in the crypt. Come on, I'll show you. Goodbye, old horrible lady. And she storms off as the doctor gets let inside. Ace is left out with these two girls who will come back later.
These two girls, Jean and Phyllis, are actually written to represent Ace's past, as a young rebellious teenager, as opposed to the more mature woman Ace is turning into.
And she finds out that these two women are evacuees from London that are staying with this old lady, because she had been nominated to support them as they were evacuated from London. Ace is like, hey, I'm from London as well. We should hang out. And the girls are like, yeah, let's go hang out where? And Ace is like, 2 Maidens Point. Or Maidens Point, 2 miles away is probably what the sign means, but I read it as 2 Maidens Point. And I was like, hey, because she's meeting 2 people there that are women.
So there was a line cut after this. Wasn't appropriate for 7:30 for a children's program. So Phyllis would reply with, Maiden's Point, well, that rules me and Jean out for a start. And Ace would be like, and me, see you later, girls. So yeah, again, this is dealing with sexuality, which is a big theme of the episode.
Yeah. But they're going to meet there at Maiden's Point. In the meantime, Ace is going down to the crypt with the doctor. Do they go to the crypt immediately, or do we get the church scene first? I think we get the silverware scene first, don't we? Yeah. So they're talking about like, oh, you've got all this really fancy silverware. It's a shame nobody's going to steal it. And the priest's like, nobody would steal it because of the curse. Ooh. And there's this really good shot, I thought. It's a very subtle shot where Ace is in the foreground, the priest is in the middle ground, and just off in the background, you can see the doctor's head on his shoulder. So you're seeing all 3 characters, and their performances and their reactions and stuff at the same time in a shot that feels natural. Like, it doesn't feel like they're standing in an arbitrary way to get the shot to work. It feels like this is just the way they're standing, and it's clever camera placement.
Yeah, this episode is directed really well.
I thought that was a nice shot that I didn't notice until my second time around watching it, where I was like, oh yeah, look at that, that's a good shot right there. But yeah, this scene's just there for the priest to be like, ooh, spooky. And then they get led down into the crypt where the professor's, trying to solve this puzzle with ancient Nordic symbols. The doctor comes in, basically spoils the puzzle for him. And he's like, oh yeah, no, it's like a 16-character alphabet, give him all these hints, and gets the professor very excited because he's like, if my machine can solve Nazi sort of... or what do you call them?
Codes.
Yeah, if it
Nazi
can solve
codes. Yeah.
If it can solve Nazi codes, then a 16-character alphabet it could solve like no problem at all. We'd be able to accomplish so much with this machine. That's exciting. And he starts trying to solve the puzzle a bit faster. Ace hears something strange that sounds like machinery, and the doctor dismisses it as the bowels of the organs and stuff like that. But Ace isn't super convinced. They leave. Why did they go to the crypt?
Just see Dr. Judson, see what he's doing.
Just say hi, just to be like, oh, hi. They're just kind of dawdling about, the Doctor and Ace at the moment.
Yeah, they are.
Because the plot hasn't kicked in for them yet. They have no agency.
Yeah. They're basically walking around to see where the plot is, what's going on.
Usually the plot comes to us. We're having to really find it this time.
But you missed out the scene where Militant is in his office and it's covered in Nazi memorabilia.
Oh, yeah.
He's basically sitting there and he gets distracted. He walks up to the chess piece and tips a piece over or whatever. This scene was edited a lot in the transmitted version. So in the original cut, there's a lot of it establishing the Nazi memorabilia. It basically opens in a shot of Hitler, which is like, oh my god, what the fuck are we doing here? And then a soldier walks in, realizes that Militant is in deep concentration, apologizes and leaves, and then Militant walks up to the chess piece and tips it over. Whereas in the TV cut, he basically sits there staring at his desk, and he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna walk over here now," rather than walk over there because somebody walked into the room.
See, I prefer the TV cut, and that's because the TV cut to me is more ambiguous as to why we're here. So when it cuts in, it's like panning up from a desk, and then you get that reveal of all the Nazi memorabilia and stuff, and we have this military commander dude just sitting at the desk. And for me, I didn't know the storyline to this one. I was like, oh, this guy's a Nazi. What a random twist this story's taken. We're suddenly, he's a Nazi controlling the space all along, which obviously we find out later on is not the case at all. But, for that and having no context and just watching him, ruminate by himself as he's there fiddling with stuff and trying to figure something out, it makes you think, what's this guy planning? He's a Nazi all along. What's going on with this thing? And it got me thinking more like, oh, who is this character and what's happening with this plot? Whereas if the guard comes in and he's like, oh, I'm sorry, I would have either thought, okay, either he's not a Nazi or the entire base are Nazis type deal. I think this is a much more subtle way of dealing with it.
That's a fair thing, yeah. So basically he's just sitting there trying to get in the headspace of what Nazis think in order to beat them in the war, which is really interesting stuff. I didn't know about it before I watched this episode.
Yeah, it's like some interesting character acting that the generals and strategists were doing, become the character, think like the enemy. But the Doctor and Ace leave the church and go look at a gravestone because they're like, there's got to be a plot around here somewhere. They find the Doctor points to a gravestone. Ace says a cheeky line about, yeah, look, there's graves everywhere. And he's like, no, the grass, look at the grass, because it's all like squinted and rough, like it's been dug up recently. And, they look at the names. They see that one of them must have been one of the descendants from Nordic invaders due to his last name. And then Ace is like, a baby died. Which I thought was such a weird thing to add in, it's like, oh look, this one was only 13 days old. Although I guess, if they're talking about dead babies and then they introduce a baby later on, it can add that, oh my god, they're going to kill off a kid, aren't they?
Because if you remember in the previous scene Ace was in, in the extended cut, we established that she hears a baby at the base. Yeah. And obviously she's thinking about babies at this time, which obviously isn't introduced in the TV cut until later on. Yeah. But
I don't think anything else of importance happens at the gravesite. Again, the Doctor and Ace are really not doing anything of they're just watching them on holiday. Like,
it's still entertaining to watch because the connection between these two actors are just so good.
see, it's like it's what I imagine happens between episodes, you know, where it's just them basically walking through a living museum, to going around like, let's chat to oh, you're gonna go meet up with these two World War II ladies, that's cool, I'm gonna come. Oh yeah, that's what happened. The Doctor decides he's gonna go with Ace to Maiden's Point. But yeah, it's an interesting, we're halfway through and the plot hasn't really started yet, but it's been fun and it's been fast to get halfway through this episode. It's not dragging.
And also you're sitting there wondering where the mystery is going to come in, what exactly is going on with each of the new characters we're introduced to, what they're doing, what their story is, and we'll get plenty of that information later on. I'm intrigued so far, is what I would say.
The Doctor and Ace are at the beach, and they're like, wow, it's nice here at the beach. And then Ace is like, oh, but all the litter. And the Doctor's like, what are you talking about? You know, she's like, litter from picnics. It's everywhere. He's like, no, people don't picnic here. We're in an army camp, remember? And
the Doctor turned around and was like, but this isn't a Jodie Whittaker storyline. This isn't about the beach
litter.
being polluted.
And they find this discarded paperwork, which I guess washed up. It's unclear how it got there. Especially because it's the Russians' paper. I guess it's maybe the guy that got killed dropped it.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking as well. Yeah,
but the Doctor picks it up and starts going through, and he's like, oh, you know, he's like, look at this lettering, Ace. Who is it? And she goes, Greeks. He goes, Russians. I like the way he says Russians. But the starts looking through it, and Ace is like, we need to warn the base, and he's like, nah, they already know. Don't worry, it's easier for the plot if they already know. Starts going through the base, and he's like, oh, okay, so there's some interesting stuff here. I think we need to go back to the church and have a wee chat with the vicar, because I think the plot's starting to form for us finally. And the word on the mention of the word church, Ace is like, I don't want to go to church, and the Doctor's like, okay, well, just stay here, whatever, bye. And Ace just decides she's gonna have a moment at the beach by herself. It's extremely windy. It must have been freezing, like.
Yeah, again, strong winds on the shooting of this episode. And also she starts throwing a rock and suddenly it becomes bad CGI, like in Legend of a Sea Devil.
Yeah. See, it comes full circle. It comes full circle. We also get a scene with the angry old lady, who I don't think is a good actor. With the two girls. Well, the angry old lady comes in and she's like, you're not going to Maiden's Point. You know why they call it Maiden's Point? And she uses so many words to describe people having sex. Like, she's like, people go there and you hear the screaming of the sin that was in their heart, and they're all damned to hell. And the two girls nudge each other like, ha 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 ha. It's fine. It's explaining stuff that we don't really need to know. Other than it's a place, it's a sinful place to go.
It does help set up some of the themes of the episode as well, Phil. Me as a kid, I was beginning to understand what the themes of the episode were. Like, I was probably like 11 when I watched this episode. Funnily enough, straight after this episode was on, I saw the TV movie for the first time. So that was a fun afternoon.
Yeah, but you didn't like it, so you were dumb. You were a dumb kid. Because the movie's great.
Dude, I'm telling you, going from Curse of Fenric into the TV movie was a whole experience. Being like, holy shit, the value, the
quality,
production values.
Yeah, the quality
Jesus
just went way up. But the Doctor goes into the church and he startles the priest who slams the book, and it's very theatrical staging. The door slams, the book closes, but I quite liked it the way that it was done. And then we get a scene, and it's a very subtle scene between the Doctor and the priest, where they're chatting and they're going through the history of the Nordic people and this huge big thing that got translated by this dude's dad or whatever. But I think that the acting here from, oh my god, name,
Nicholas Parsons or
No,
Sylvester McCoy?
From Sylvester McCoy. How did I forget that? It's Sylvester Stallone with McCoy crisps. With the Sylvester Stallone's performance here. Stallone? Oh my God, Sylvester McCoy. So McCoy's performance here is amazing, and Sylvester Stallone shows up and it's wild. No, but I it's really subtle, and he's mainly just monologuing and reading exposition for he's reading this poem almost of this person died, and it's this big Nordic thing, but just his voice and the way he's delivering the lines, I'm like, ooh, this is I'm sitting next to a cozy fire listening to you read this.
He's got a great way of speaking. That Scottish accent is really good for giving some exposition. It's really interesting as well. And also Nicholas Parsons is great in this scene as well.
It's not a bad scene. It's a very good scene. And we're cutting back and forth as this is happening. Ace is at the beach, and the two girls show up. How the two girls showed up after they were told not to go, I don't know. I guess they snuck out. It's not really relevant.
They snuck out.
Yeah.
It's
It doesn't really play into anything. But they're in their swimming gear, and they're like, come on, let's go swimming. And Ace is like, no, there's a ginormous sign behind me that's just a quite frankly ridiculously large sign that says that we can't go swimming because there's undercurrents that'll sweep us away. And the girls go, yeah, well, you're just a stupid baby doll. And Ace is like, nah, swimming is stupid. She literally says swimming is stupid, which is an interesting line of dialogue, I think. And, the two girls go out swimming, and I'm sure nothing bad's going to happen to them as we get a shot from under the water at something coming up towards them. Nothing to be concerned about.
Yeah, that shot from under the water just reminds me of Jaws. Constant danger going on. And also that sign behind Ace, dangerous undercurrents, is excellent. And Ace not wanting to go into the water because she's a mature, grown woman now is a great little touch as well. Because obviously, before she would have probably swam with them, even though it's dangerous.
Yeah, but her describing swimming as stupid is very childlike to me. That's very, I don't want to go swimming. Swimming's stupid. You're all stupid idiots. It's very, very almost babyish, as she gets called.
This whole scene is supposed to be indicative of peer pressure, because there's a scene cut before this where the older sister is peer pressure her younger sister to Abigail down the rocks.
Abseil,
yeah. I don't know why I get those words confused, but yeah. So yeah, this whole peer pressure element is good for the episode, I feel.
Yeah. And this is also where we get the I love the scene where the doctor is reading this poem, and he's figuring out that Maiden's Place, or Maiden's Point as it's described in the thing, is where this stuff's been going down, where whatever happened, this really tragic thing happened. He's like, oh my God, but I just left Ace there. And it's like, yeah, no, but I'm here now, so what's going on? It's a amazing pulling the rug out from under you, where you're expecting the story to go a certain way.
Again, in previous stories in Classic Who, Ace would have just swam alongside them or whatever, and she would have been needed saved. But here she is, just like, I'm not stupid enough to
put myself in danger. There was a big sign that said, if you go in here, you're going to die. So I was like, I'm not going in there.
But also you skipped out the scene where Briggs and Judson and Millington are in the computer room, just being like, oh yeah, we can't let the Russians get this, all that information in there. Yeah,
because that's why I skipped it out, because it was, there's a good line of dialogue, I thought, where Judson's talking about how marvelous computers are and how they're going to be, in every home, and they're going to be doing loads of thinking, and the soldier guy's like, yeah, but whose thoughts will they think? I thought that was a really good line. That's a line that stood out to me.
One thing to talk about that scene is that in the original script, Judson and Millington would have been former gay lovers, but obviously that had to be cut out, and it comes back later. In fact, I'll point it out later, but yeah.
That's when they kiss and they go. It's a shocking way to end the episode.
Yeah, that was very shocking. It just turns into full frontal nudity as well.
We see the two girls who have seemingly survived their wee trip out to the ocean, despite what the large sign said. And they're doing that thing that I got taught in primary school that World War II people did, where they're drawing on the back of their legs to make it look like tights. And I was like, is it something that actually worked? Because, like, I know I understand they did it, and as a way of making them feel like they weren't in the middle of wartime, but surely it didn't look very good in real life.
So these girls are doing it because it'll make them seem older than they actually are, because this again alludes to their sexuality, them wanting to explore their sexuality, which is an important theme. And of course, during the scene, we're comparing themselves to like supermodels and pop stars, whatever. Not pop stars, because pop wasn't invented yet, but you know what I mean. Famous people, famous icons.
Yeah, idols. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the whole time they're getting watched by this Russian soldier who, it's just this little moment that I really like, where he's pointing the gun at them and he's just saying to himself, do not come any further. Do not take another step. Come on, please don't. Because if they spot him, he has to take them out, and he really doesn't want to kill these two ladies. And thankfully, they turn off and walk away, and he's like just sighs a breath of relief,
And of course, we discover a little amulet on the beach, and we're like, we touch it, and we're like, oh, it's like a pulse of electricity. And I'm sure that can't be suspicious at all.
No, nothing to worry about. The doctor gives the professor this book. The book that he got with all the translation in it, and the professor does even more reading from the book, and we discover that, the treasure that the Vikings had stolen, whatever was from the oceans, coming back for it. And it's been killing the crew off one by one, and the same thing's happening with the Russians as we're getting this shot underwater of, it's a pretty gruesome looking shot, and we get it multiple times of the floating dead body under the water.
I have a question for you. Do you notice anything interesting about this dead body?
That he blinks.
That, and also it's a black man in white makeup.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
So apparently with really white makeup, we needed a black man. This is John Vanderpool, who was an effects assistant. And he was chosen because he's black, and the effect of a corpse worked better with a black man with white makeup. And he was also the only registered diver on set, so it made complete sense.
Yeah, to stick him under the water, yeah. Okay, that makes sense. It's reverse blackface. It's white face, but hey, it is effective because
apart from a bit where he blinks.
yeah, but he probably had water in his eye and was like, oh my god, this sucks. Yes. So as the professor is monologuing through about this treasure, we're seeing the dead body and stuff. We follow a piece of treasure into the ocean that one of the girls throws into the water, isn't it? And it gets picked up by a monster hand, and we've been watching so much Sea Devils, I really expected there to be a noise as the hand showed up. But actually that brings me into talking about this. I think the soundtrack for this episode is used very effectively. I think it's subtle and adds to the scenes where you don't notice it, where if it wasn't there, it would be missing,
Yeah. The composer basically wanted to make it feel like a wartime movie to begin with, and then as fantastical elements, as in the monsters popping later, he wants it to be weirder. And I think the soundtrack really works because it's not in your face and just noise like the Sea Devils.
Yeah. We then get the Doctor and Ace opening up a door and being cheeky with one another. There's this moment of what would surely be improv where Ace is like, oh, I didn't know they had personal radios, and the Doctor's like, no, they're trying to break codes, and they like pull a face at one another. It's just this charming little bit.
Yeah, it really works.
And then the lady's like, hey, what are you guys doing? And the Doctor's like, oh, we're just being nosy, what's going on in here? And they have a wee conversation. Ace spots a baby under the table, and she's like, oh my god, a child. And she...
And also Sylvester McCoy makes bird noises, which
he does.
I love.
Yeah. He's channeling his inner Radagast the Brown, because obviously he plays him in The Hobbit.
Sylvester McCoy is someone I wish was my grandpa or something. You know what I mean?
He seems like a lovely man. He does seem like a lovely man. They pull out the baby, and just this little bit that I thought was, Sylvester McCoy suddenly not acting is, Ace picks up the baby and she's like, how am I supposed to hold this thing? Sylvester McCoy's hand is immediately behind the baby's head. Like,
yeah, that's 100% not acting. Sophie didn't know how to hold the baby, and Sylvester McCoy's like, oh, fucking watch out, Sophie.
Yeah, he's immediately protecting that baby from bashing its head off stuff, which, well done.
And also, this is very rare that an actual baby is on set in Doctor Who,
and
not a doll.
And that baby ruins the scene because if it's kind of noticeable through TV speakers, it's exceptionally noticeable through headphones. All the audio is all the audio for this interior stuff is just recorded in the room. It's not dubbed over, and the baby is sitting there, gooing and guying and making all sorts of noises. But
there are points where a baby is making noises when the baby is a he, even though the character is a she, but the baby is making noises even though he isn't on screen. It's like, you couldn't take the baby out of the room?
Yeah, I know. And there are moments where the baby's making a noise, and then in the next shot it goes, where it wasn't making a noise in the next shot, and it just gets cut off.
Also, you can hear the creaking of the floorboards as well. It's not the best sounding scene, but it's not that bad. I've heard so much worse.
This is what I was saying, about it being shot on location and not in a studio. They're in a place that had no intention of ever bothering about recording audio, so they can have creaky floors and they don't need to worry about stuff like that.
It's in an environment that can't be controlled.
Yes. But the soldier dude comes in and he's like, what did I say about babies? Get rid of that baby, And the lady's like, "Oh, but I will. I'll get rid of it in 24 hours, sir. Haha."
Did you mention that the baby had the same name as Ace's
No, not
mom?
yet.
Which is an important detail.
That's a bit that comes up, I think, either just before or just after this bit. But yeah,
yes.
She's like, "What's the name of this baby?" And she goes, "Audrey." And Ace goes, "Gross. That's the worst name you could have ever named that kid." And I was like, Jesus, that came out of nowhere. You're just so rude.
Yeah. She has her reasons, I will say. I don't want to spoil anything for you, but yeah. Mm-hmm. And then Ace is like, Audrey from Little Shop of Horrors.
She gives the baby back. The guy comes in. He gets told off about having the baby, and Ace is about to stand up for the lady, and the doctor's like, "No, not now. Shut up. This isn't the time or the place." And he grabs her by the scruff of the neck and drags her out of the room, which is where they then discover his Nazi room that he's got. And Ace came to the same conclusion I did, where she's like, "Oh my God, he's a Nazi," and the doctor's like, "No, he's not a Nazi. This is just He's putting himself into the mind of a Nazi, though to astonishing detail, which was just this little line of dialogue where it's like, there's something he respects about the Nazis, that he's gone this far to make it accurate, And there's this other moment where the doctor's like looking through photos and, it's just talking. It's very somber. And he's like, "Look at this. A bombed city, innocent civilians. Hang on a minute." As he sees a school uniform photo that's completely, there's something off about it. And he just drops and stops talking about this really somber thing to go look at this school uniforms.
The thing about the bombing of the scene where he's commenting on the bombing, it wasn't scripted, but Sylvester McCoy thought that the doctor would be, as a pacifist in war, he would be deeply sad about human destructiveness. And that's a touch that Sylvester McCoy wanted in the scene, which really works.
It does really work. I think it's very effective. And they start looking at this photo, and I forget what was important about this photo. What was important about this
we
photo?
find out that Judson and Millington went to the same school together 20 years ago, which will come in episode 2 in a censored line, which reveals that we'll get to it, but we'll find out soon.
There was a big kiss. They did a big kiss.
Yes, kind of, yeah.
Yeah. Then we cut to Judson and the soldier guy whose name I don't remember. The two boys that like to kiss each
Millington.
other. The two lover boys, as they're like reading more from the book and talking about Ace, and Judson's like, "Yeah, no, Ace is really good with computers. He's so smart." And then the guy's like, "Yeah, this episode's called The Curse of Fenric." It's just a way to, be like, there's a spooky curse on the place. At this point, we basically figured it out, but it's the final piece to the puzzle, really, isn't it?
Yeah. He's also said The Wolves of Fenric, which is, again, an alternate title of the episode. So either way, he says the title of the episode, which is interesting.
It's a shame that there's still one scene left before it cuts to the credits. Otherwise, it would be a classic, say the title of the episode, go to the credits, and that would have been just perfect. But there is one wee scene left. Yes, because it is Doctor Who, we need to end with the Doctor about to die. As the Doctor and Ace are back walking along the beach, Ace spots a dead body of the Russian soldier, and she's like, "Doctor, look!" And they run over, and they see that he's holding something. It's a piece of the treasure. The Doctor picks it up and is suddenly surrounded by Russian troops, all pointing their guns at him. And soundtrack cuts in, go to credits, and surely the Doctor is about to be murdered, as happens. Every single week. How's he going to get out of this one? Again, surrounded by guns. I feel like that happens all the time.
So yeah, the thing about this cliffhanger is it's a bit of a fake cliffhanger. As we said, the episode was overwritten, and partway, like 2 minutes into part 2 is where the real cliffhanger should have been. So this is a fake cliffhanger. It shouldn't have ended with the Doctor having guns pointed at him, but it's a fine cliffhanger, I've seen worse.
It is a classic Who cliffhanger. It fits, I think out of all the classic Who episodes we've covered, 90% of them have ended with the Doctor getting a gun pointed at him.
Yeah, he certainly does get in a lot of danger, but it's immediately solved in the next episode.
Yeah. But that is the end of episode 1 of The Curse of Fenric, and we shall be jumping into episode 2 extremely quickly. Any brief thoughts on episode 1?
Yeah, it's a pretty good introduction episode, It's got a lot of intrigue, a lot of good performances. Sylvester and Sophie are great as always. And yeah, it's a great episode, and it feels like it's really sad to know this is one of the final episodes, because this is where Doctor Who is starting to get back on top, being a great show again after like maybe 5 years of being not so great, but it is what it is,
It's too late at that point, yeah.
Yes. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I wasn't super into it the first time I watched it. I thought it was a bit slow. Watching it again just now for the podcast, I enjoyed it a lot more. Probably just because I can actually focus on it, because that's what I'm supposed to be doing right now, and I don't have modern day distractions around me. Sylvester McCoy, I think, is great in it. Ace is fun. I still don't have enough on her to form an opinion, but she's a character, which is lovely to see. I like my companions to have characters. Sylvester McCoy is definitely, though, a very good Doctor. He seems like a cozy man. That's, I'm quite happy to watch a cozy man walk around in a nice jumper and a big jacket, be like, yes. Yeah, and it's a solid setup. It's I think it's a bit of a slow burn of it does take the full 20 minutes for the plot to be set up.
Yeah.
Whereas usually, the Doctor shows up and the plot's going and we're off to the adventure. Whereas this one, they're dawdling about and they're like, oh, okay, we're just going to slowly set up the plot. Which is an interesting choice for the series to take. But yeah, no, we're interested to see how it concludes with episodes, 2, 3, and 4. Obviously, I've seen episode 2 already, but I've not seen 3 and 4 yet. But we shall jump right into episode 2 this episode. So here we go.
Go.
This small capsule contains just a few drops of diluted toxin.
No, don't!
Just think what a bombful could do to a city like Dresden or Moscow.
It's inhuman.
It could mean the end of the war.
And Whitehall thinks that Moscow is careless enough to let you detonate one of those things inside the Kremlin.
Oh, but that's the beauty of it, Doctor. We won't detonate it. They'll do it themselves. They'll use the machine to decrypt our ciphers, but Dr. Judson has programmed it to self-destruct when it tries to decrypt a particular word. And once the political climate is appropriate, we will include the word in one of our ciphers.
And the word is?
What else could it be, Doctor? Love.
So the episode begins, as all second episodes do, with the Doctor immediately getting out of the imminent death that he was about to receive. The Russian soldiers decide they're not going to shoot the Doctor and instead going to stab him with a bayonet because shooting would draw too much attention. The Doctor speaks Russian to them, which then weirdly Ace translates.
Yeah, apparently it's really bad Russian on the Sylvester McCoy's part. He's not pronouncing it correctly, which is understandable.
That's not surprising. As far as I know, he's not a native speaker of Russian.
Are you sure?
No, I can't say 100%. But Ace translated it to that proverb that we heard before about, they're coming for the jewels or whatever the exact translation was, and the guard's like, okay, well, we're going to take you to the captain because you clearly know something that we don't know. They take him off to the captain, and we cut to the professor for where he's it's just a replay of the scene we saw before, where he's reading from the inscription, and we're going through the ocean, and we see the like monster hand and the dead guy under the like it's the exact same scene we saw last episode.
Yeah, pretty much. And then it's the bit after that where we see the inscriptions in the wall glow. That's supposed to be the cliffhanger to episode 1, but obviously they ran out of time and had to show it over to this episode, which is, I think it would have played much better in episode 1.
Yeah, and it would make a change of pace for a cliffhanger that isn't just the Doctor getting murdered again. But hey, I thought the effect of the things glowing worked pretty well for the digital effect that it is.
It's not a bad effect. It looks much better on the Blu-ray because they went back and digitally altered it to look it's like a green glow this time. That effect was actually done physically, except there's too much smoke and the camera couldn't actually see what's going on, so we had to go over it with a digital effect for a time, which does not look as great as it should.
Love a good waste of time and effort. The Doctor gets pulled over to the he gets taken to the Russian captain, and they're like speaking, and the captain's like, so if we kill you, we lose. If we do anything except turn you over, then we lose. If we let you go, then you tell on us and we lose. So what do we do here? And the Doctor's like, you've got to let me go. It's the only solution that we've got. And he's working with the guy here, and he's like, your soldier over there, the dude that got mysteriously injured before, let's try and figure out what's wrong with him. He goes over and he's helping him out, and the guy's screaming and talking incoherently, and I think he just gives the Doctor the gem. I don't remember if he says anything of really much importance.
It's more like the Doctor takes it from his hands.
Yeah, takes it.
And then the guy starts screaming some more.
Yeah, and the Doctor just puts him to sleep by pressing on his forehead, because
which he does a lot.
It's a useful trick to have.
I'm surprised. I'm surprised he doesn't frankly do it more often. To be honest, so many times where it's like you could just put that guy to sleep.
Yeah. But with great power comes great responsibility. So.
Well, that's from Batman.
So yeah, something like that. The professor, in the meantime, is shouting at his nurse lady, who calls him an invalid, and he's like, "Oh, shut up, Crane!" Again, it's like a catchphrase for him, I guess, because he said it in the last episode as well. And then she just starts to pick him up, and that's the last we see of him so far. It's a scene
Again, it's emphasizing that he's just frustrated about his disability and treated like a child, which is understandable, to be honest.
Yeah, and then we see the two girls walking along the beach, and they flirt with some soldiers who, for the briefest of moments, I thought were the Russian soldiers, and then I went, oh wait, no, we're on army base, aren't we? These aren't the Russian soldiers. These are just regular British soldiers, because I was like, those girls are way too nonchalant about those Russian soldiers there.
And also remember last episode, one of them had a gun.
Yeah, almost got shot. Yeah. But they're walking off back to the beach. They look like they're about to go swimming again. I'm sure there's nothing to read in there, and everything is okay with those characters. Nothing bad happened to them at all.
Oh boy, yes. just a nice, pleasant swim in the cold English weather.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't think of a better thing to do. Doctor and Ace are then walk over into a church to go and chat with some folk. So the Doctor and Ace walk into the church, and the Doctor's like, something feels, strange about this church, something's off about it. And Ace is like, yeah, no, I thought it was a weird church as well. And, it doesn't seem like a church. And the Doctor's like, what do you mean?
It's more like a fortress.
Yeah. And he's like, no, God damn it. I thought, she's like, it looks like a fortress on the outside, but the inside is a church. And he's like, no, I meant it looked different than earlier today. Just a little fun wee back and forth between them.
Yeah, the little bits where the Doctor is questioning Ace, trying to educate her on the weird going-ons around her, is brilliant comedy. Just so much fun watching Doctor and Ace be teacher and pupil.
They have a fun. I like Sylvester McCoy's, sarcastic attitude toward. He's sometimes quite mean, but it's always in a more lighthearted way than.
Yeah, he when he's mean, it feels more like he's like a father figure to Ace, which really works in my opinion, because obviously Ace really didn't have any parental figures around in her life, so of course the relationship to the Doctor is important to her, which comes into play later.
They go into a back room of the church, and they're looking at this inscription that they've not seen before. And the Doctor's starts questioning Ace about what's wrong with it, speaking about the Doctor trying to teach Ace something. And Ace is like, it's got fewer letters, it's a different alphabet, it's all this different stuff. And the Doctor's there going like, and what else is different? And the Ace runs out of ideas, and he goes, and it wasn't here yesterday. This is brand new. Somebody has carved this in. Ace is like, oh, wow, yeah, of course. But this is over 300 years old. How could it have appeared, or not appeared yesterday, but appear here today? And Ace again is talking about hearing stuff in the walls, which the Doctor has been dismissing until now. And he's like, yo, have you been hearing stuff, Ace? Let's investigate that. And during this whole time, we've been cutting back and forth. So the episode, pacing-wise, is a lot quicker than last episode was. There's a lot... Yeah. Everything's in motion now, whereas last episode was setting it up. So we've got a lot of people that we're jumping about with. So we'll leave the Doctor and Ace for now, because there's some stuff that we need to chat about before what happens when they open the secret door. The Russian soldiers are Russian soldiering about. They sneak attack on some British soldiers and knock them out. And that's the last time we see them for a little bit. They're like, did anybody see us? No. Haha, good.
Yeah, apparently in the original script that was going to be so much more brutal. Then realised it's a kids program, it's 7:30 at night, we can't have too much violence, so we had to tone it down considerably.
Yeah, the original script was quite strange. It's full of these gay characters, it's got all this violence, and it's all these sex innuendos. It's a very mature script idea.
Yeah, speaking of differences from the script, this is a good point to point out that in the novelization of this script, so the guy who wrote the episode wrote the book of it, and it was revealed that Middleton accidentally caused Judson to become disabled, as during a rugby game when they were young, Middleton caught Judson smiling at another boy, and he shoved him to the ground and fractured his spine.
Yikes.
Which is, imagine that on a kids' show at 7:30 at night.
In 1982 or something.
Yeah, 1989, yes.
9, yeah. Milton is being awfully rude to Judson, and he yells at him that he has to use their computing machine to translate the Norse codes instead of the Nazi codes, and he's like, but, I wanted to do the Nazi ones. And Milton's like, shut up and just do it. And then we go back to the Doctor. And Ace, as they're looking for this hidden door, and, they're looking at a bookshelf, classic, but this time the bookshelf opens before they realize it, and the Doctor turns around to have a gun in his face with Milton pointing the gun.
It's a rather Scooby-Doo-esque scene where Shaggy's Scooby's in the background being like, oh no, there's a ghost right behind me, and Shaggy's too preoccupied at Scooby snacks or whatever.
Yeah.
Just reminds me of Scooby-Doo.
It's a fairly, any hidden door on a bookshelf is inherently cartoonish, isn't it?
Yes.
But
how realistic is for this to happen? Have you ever encountered one in real life?
Not yet, but I'm hopeful.
Someday.
Yeah, fingers crossed I come across a secret door in a bookshelf. I'm banned from most libraries because I keep pulling books off the shelves looking for it, but one of these days, there's a lot of libraries. There's got to be at least one hidden door.
Yeah, certainly.
But Milton leads the Doctor down into this dark depths through the hidden door, and they find a laboratory where it turns out Milton is making chemical weapons to drop on the Nazi population. Or is it the Russian population? I think it's the Russian population. Or probably,
Russian.
Probably both, if you're being honest.
Probably both, yeah.
But yeah, he's creating chemical weapons, which, the Ace and the Doctor are pretty appalled at. But the Doctor, again, this Doctor being very talkative and able to talk his way out of situations, starts quoting some Norse mythology to Milton, which convinces Milton that the Doctor understands why Milton would be creating these chemical weapons and why he wants to do it. So he's like, okay, Doctor, come with me. I want to show you something, which the Doctor is like,
That's one of my favorite things about this Doctor. Like, when we spoke about him in the movie, he was reading a book, just educating himself. I really love the fact that the Doctor just sits around and reads book when in between episodes. That's a really good concept. Like, he's literally got all the time in the world.
Yeah, I like that one song that he played on a record that kept going time, 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 time. Yeah, God, that Doctor Who movie. Song, yeah. Doctor Who movie so good.
Yeah, I can't believe you convinced me that the Doctor Who movie was good.
Yeah, genuinely love it so much. But the Doctor convinces Milton that he's on his side, and he does a fun finger waggle to Ace as they're leaving the room. Just a nice little performance from Sylvester McCoy. He's a very fun Doctor to watch on screen.
He's a very physical Doctor for sure.
Yeah. The priest is also there practicing a sermon, is what I assumed he was doing, because there's nobody else in the church. Or if there was people in the church, I didn't see it.
He's mainly talking about faith and love and all that. It's important to the episodes. It's about the theme in the episodes and about him losing faith in like society because of the war, obviously. And there's an ice cream truck right behind me. It's great. But the script was to have a priest break down and cry at the end of reading, and it was thought that the performance was good enough, but he didn't need to break down and cry. Oh. And I think he's the best performance in this episode, aside from like Sylvester and Sophie.
He's good. I wasn't gripped by that scene. I didn't find its themes to be compelling in any way. It's like, yeah, cool. I don't really care about this priest character, to be fair. Also, go get ice cream. I'd like some. It's a nice day. So
I can't remember if it's this episode or the next episode that has a scene with the priest and Ace, and I think that scene is one of the best of this episode.
There is a scene in this episode with Ace and the priest, if I'm remembering, and then the vampire girls show up. Spoiler. So the episode continues with the Doctor, Ace. I was about to call her Rose there. The Doctor, Ace, and Milton walking.
She is a lot like Rose in a way, I would say. Yeah. I think Russell T Davies took a lot of inspiration from Ace to create Rose.
Yeah, well, I mean, he couldn't take inspiration from any other companion, especially a female companion. But the Doctor, Ace, and Milton are walking through the church. Ace spots the vicar sitting by himself, and she's like, "Hey, why is he sitting by himself?" And then Milton's like, "Oh, hey, no girls allowed, by the way, boys only." And so Ace has to stay with the vicar as the Doctor and Milton walk off. And this is where we get the scene that you were just talking about, with Ace and the vicar having a wee quiet conversation with each other, where the vicar's basically saying, like, when he was a kid, everything seemed hopeful and warm, and his dad was the vicar, and the church was this lovely place. And now that he's in charge and his dad is gone, everything seems a lot colder, and he's responsible for bringing people hope when he himself doesn't feel any hope. It's a good scene, as you were saying before.
It's probably my favorite scene from the whole story. It's just, I think the actor Nicholas Parsons does such a great job at the lines, and it feels so much like modern Who, where we have a sit down, just get to know the side characters a little bit. We have this little conversation that brings home the themes of the episode. Yeah. It's just really lovely.
I just wish that they talked about how good genocide was a little bit. At least we're coming to that scene. We're getting to that. That felt like Doctor Who to me. But yeah, the Doctor is with Milton walking through a giant facility. Yeah, sure, we'll talk about the scene first, then we'll go back. The Russian soldiers are also there, and one of them's upset about the murder that they just did, and the other Russian guy's like, hey, the murder was needed. And, that was that scene. But the Doctor and Milton get led into the professor, into his big machine. And this is the first time the Doctor's seen the computing machine. Milton shows it off a bit, and he's like, it's the most advanced machine, that ever created. It's a fully automatic computer, and the Doctor's like, yeah, that is impressive for the 1940s. Haha, loser. But this is where he gets explained that the Russians are coming to steal the machine, and that they've been ordered to let them steal the machine, because in the back of the machine, they have loaded it with this chemical weapon that they've been producing. Do they ever name the chemical weapon? I don't remember.
I can't remember myself. There's so much in this episode to keep in mind.
Yeah,
There's like a billion subplots. It's a overwritten episode, I would say.
Yeah, this whole stuff with the gas bomb and the Russians stealing it is an episode in itself. What you need to remember is there's also vampire sea ladies and a Viking curse going on.
Yeah.
Yes.
Whereas I would say it's a bit overambitious, this story. We'll get to more. There's more storylines to explore in the next two parts as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, I really like the idea of the main villain guy. I would call him a villain because he wants to bomb the Russians, obviously, and it's like the idea of, even though we're peaceful now, things are going to go south, and we're going to destroy them before they get the chance to destroy us, or get the chance to even think about destroying us, which is really interesting.
What I like with Milton is they set him up to be the villain very subtly before he, reveals the mask and points a gun in the Doctor's face or whatever. When the Doctor's in his Nazi office and he's like, oh, he's putting himself into their shoes, a bit too accurately.
Yes.
It's that there's something off about Milton. He sees something a bit too like, he sees something in the Nazis that's he focuses on them a bit too much. He idolizes them maybe too much than he should.
Yes, the idea of this idea has been explored in Doctor Who quite often. The idea of, if you destroy the Daleks, you too become like a Dalek. The Doctor will become like a good Dalek if he destroys the Daleks, and that's basically saying, if you become like the Nazis, you are the Nazis.
Yeah. The Milton then leads the Doctor deeper into the facility, where he is walking around just so many bombs. Just so many bombs from floor to ceiling.
And all the bombs look like nipples. And on set,
according to Scott, they do. I didn't personally see it, but
And according to everyone on set, they called this the Nipple Factory.
Well, they're a bunch of filthy minds.
If you look at the bombs straight on, or more shots, you'll see, but they look like nipples. They got little circly bits to bump,
I mean, I guess you could, but I would never make that connect. To me, it just looks like bombs with the thing, like a silvery bit on top. But I understand the connection, because it's a oval thing with a cylindrical little nub. But I would never have figured out that they were nipple bombs.
I presume when you're in the room, just looking at them straight on, they look more like boobs.
Yeah. And when you're a gross 1989 man, but he's getting shown around up to this bit by Milton, who's then like, "Come on, I'll show you this exhibit," and he brings in a bunch of white doves in a cage and this tiny, tiny little vial of the chemical that they're producing, and he drops it in. A bunch of smoke comes up, and we get this really nice shot as the camera's pushing through the smoke, that's like turning green or whatever, into Milton and the Doctor's face, as Milton's like explaining, like, imagine dropping bombs of this on cities, into like Moscow or Dresden, the amount of people we'll be able to kill with this thing. Is this really, really good evil speech that Milton goes into.
And also, doves are a symbol of love and peace, which makes it even more better. And also, John Woo, the director of Mission Impossible 2 and all those films, he loves using doves. He's crying at this scene. He's like, oh, fuck, the doves. Oh, no.
Yeah, and speaking of love, this is where Milton also says that, the key word for the bombs, the thing that's going to make them, signal to go, is the word love in their ciphers, which is... Do you understand that? Do you get the metaphor there? Yeah,
it is hammering the metaphor a bit too close.
In case you didn't understand the speech that the priest was having with Ace.
Yeah. But at the same time, this is a family program trying to get the kids on board with what's going on, even though the adults are also confused. But yeah,
it's fun. It's a nice. It's this side of the story is so dark compared to the like kind of stupidity that comes in with the vampire girls, you know.
And also, it's quite sad, you know. These themes are still relevant today, obviously, and it's like Doctor Who is just presenting these themes in a decent way. It's interesting, and the show is going to be cancelled in a month's time, which is really sad to think about when it's still quite good, I would say.
Yeah, Scott, to be clear, there is talking about classic Who, not modern Who, is about to be cancelled in a month's time. You know.
Oh yeah. it feels like modern Who is going to be cancelled soon.
Yeah. It's not though. It's not though. Thankfully, it's been saved.
Definitely not.
Saved by Russell the Davis. But yeah, no. This is, I would say, so far, better put together than the fifth Doctor story we watched. With
Resurrection of the Daleks.
Yeah, with Peter Davidson, because that one had good moments, but was full of filler and nonsense, and it felt like shackled together, you know.
Yeah, Resurrection of the Daleks had a lot of subplots like Curse of Fenric does, but there's subplots in Resurrection of the Daleks where it's like, oh yeah, we're going to clone the Doctor and then have him assassinate the Time Lords. That never really comes into play, whereas here, they're trying to make everything connect to the curse and the vampires.
Yeah, to have like this overarching theme.
Yeah, and it feels like they all conclude by the end of the story, which is good. You know, we don't have any subplots where there's somebody trying to clone the Doctor for no reason.
Yeah.
And also, no companions get hit by a Dalek plunger.
Yeah, and then spend the entire time lying down. Yeah. And then just leave at the end of the episode. Never to come back until the centenary special. Hey, look at it, ties in.
Actually, she did come back in the following episode, which was the 5 Doctors for, you know, the 20th anniversary special, which is a weird way to bring back a companion straight after they just left.
Straight after, yeah. That is weird.
It's like if Rose just came back in the Runaway Bride.
So we get some soldiers that are moving some stuff into a room in some bunker place. It's unclear where they are. And
under a school is where they are, but that's not part of the story. It's where they actually shot it.
Some bricks behind them explode, and they pay no mind to it. They're like, yeah, whatever.
There's this weird, strange digital green glow.
Yeah.
The green glow is actually there to hide the stick that's pushing the bricks aside.
Yeah,
but
well,
you know.
Yeah, fair enough. And inside this is some weird white pot thing. And the guy's like, hey, is this one of our things? And the other guy's like, does it say it's one of ours? He's like, no. He's like, well, get rid of it. And the guy just tosses it to the side. And I thought he was going to break it. I'm surprised it didn't smash, honestly. Because it's like this delicate like pottery and he just drops it on some bricks. But they get back to sealing up whatever stuff they're sealing up. There's then a Russian dude who's cleaning his hat or drinking from his hat, doing something. Why would he drink the seawater?
Yes, he's washing his face, but in the script, the man was washing his blood off his hands, just shell-shocked by the massacre he was part of.
Yeah, they didn't realize what TV show they were making when they wrote the script, or did they? And as he's washing his helmet, the 2 girls from before go running back into the ocean. They're like, oh, we've got nothing proper to wear. Who cares? As they go diving into the deeps of the sea. The Russian guy just runs away, surprised that the girls don't care that he's there, I'm guessing. And the girls are talking about how great the water is. It's so warm, it's lovely. And then this mist starts rolling in, and they're like, oh, a mist is rolling in. And they're like, I don't care, the water's so good, yeah. And then, of course, they vanish. I'm surprised it took this long for them to be killed and turned into vampire people. Why didn't it get them the first time they went in?
Yeah, because this feels like I think it's the 3rd or 4th time they've been in this water in this story so far.
Yeah, they keep going back. Like, why not just get them the first time? And because they don't do anything. They get shouted at like twice and then just go back to the water. I would just get rid of the shouting at scenes and make them turn into vampires immediately.
And maybe take away those scenes and add a bit more plot so we can understand what is actually going on. Because now we've got this magical pot, but I think I know what it does, but I'll have to rewatch the next 2 episodes.
It explodes bricks.
Yeah, it explodes bricks. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it does. Milton is sitting in his office as some soldier guy comes in, and he's like, "Oh, well, they finished sealing up the thing." And he's like, "Did they find anything strange while they were there?" And he's like, "Oh, they didn't report anything." He's referring to the funny pot that blows up bricks, as you see him draw the pot later on. And he's like, "Okay, very well then. I'm going to need you guys to go and." He says to collect something first of all that was it's cut out all the like radio wires or something like that, and also then burn all the chess sets. And the guy's like, "The chess sets?" And he's like, "Burn them." Which
And now the funny thing is, you don't know anything about what's going on with these chess sets.
no,
or
not yet.
anything like
I
that.
don't know yet. Yeah.
Yeah.
The only
And
thing
I
I can
don't-
think is chess is popular in Russia, and he really doesn't like that.
Yeah, it draws with Russian soldiers. They're like, I can smell some chess sets around.
Yeah. The doctor is with Milton. No, he's not with Milton first. He goes to see the girls with the baby called Audrey, named after Ace's mum. Well, not named after her mum, but Ace for some reason thinks that. And they're collecting the chess sets, and the doctor's like, "You don't think there's anything weird with that?" And the guy's like, "Yeah, of course there's something weird with it, but it's orders, isn't it? What am I supposed to do?" And then we just get a nice little sit-down chat with the doctor and this lady about the baby, and she's like, "Oh, it's going to stay with my friend for a while." And I don't understand the purpose of this conversation, but I like the doctor can do this bird thing really well. Is it dubbed in? Is it dubbed in, or is it just?
No, it's just Sylvester McCoy being Sylvester McCoy.
It's amazing. It's such a good little whistle he can do. Like.
Sylvester McCoy is a man of many talents. But yeah, I love his scene because it brings up the doctor's family, and he's like,
Yeah.
I don't know where my family is, and God, what's her name again? Phyllis? No, that's not her name.
I don't know.
What's her name?
The
I
lady.
can't remember her name.
Yeah,
the lady.
The lady with the
call,
baby.
I was going to call her something else there, but it's a spoiler.
Oh.
But yeah, the lady's like, "Oh, what about your family?" And the doctor's like, "I don't know. It's a war, isn't it?" The lady replies with, which is kind of foreshadowing.
Foreshadowing the
War.
Time War. Yeah. I had the same thought.
Which apparently has happened by this point, because Remembrance of the Daleks was in season 25, and that's where Russell T Davies says the Time War actually started.
Oh, okay. But the Time War takes place in like this time bubble thing, didn't it? On Gallifrey. Gallifrey and Scarrow, or just Gallifrey? It must be Gallifrey and Scarrow, surely.
I think it's Gallifrey and Scarrow.
Yeah. It's like this weird time bubble where you can't get in or out of it. It's like it's timey-wimey. It makes no sense, but
It really doesn't.
But it's not entirely true, because the Doctor knows where at least one of his family members are. Susan is on Earth in the future where he left her. At any point, he could go back and get her.
Again, we've mentioned how insane it was, but the Doctor just leaves Susan on this. The planet was basically destroyed by the Daleks, and they're rebuilding. And he's like, "Oh yeah, this is the perfect place to leave my granddaughter. This man she just met 2 minutes ago, brilliant."
Yeah, but she flirted, so off the
And
ship.
And that's something that wasn't in the second movie, the Peter Cushing movie, because obviously Susan was like 6. It would have been very weird if he kept that in.
It would have been great if they got rid of the love interest guy and the Doctor still just left her though. I'll come back for you, Susan, but you've got to stay here.
Susan has got to be in a centenary special or a 60th
I know
anniversary, right?
they're running out of time to stick her back in.
Because they're bringing back Tegan and Ace. Ace, I understand. I like Ace. Tegan's, I'm not really too sure about her
It's a
character.
deep cut that Chibnall just likes because he likes that era,
But Susan, come on, she's in her 80s. I need to look her up.
Early 90s. Is she early in her? She looks about 130.
She is 81 years old.
Oh wow, she looks a lot older than 81. I thought she was a lot older than that. But yeah, I get her before it's too late, because you have the most heartbreaking scene. Although, to be fair, I would bring her back 100% if the show got cancelled. and it was the last episode because you could completely bookend the show where it's the last episode of Doctor Who and the Doctor's like, okay, I'm going back to see Susan. It's the last scene. He's just sitting with her as an old lady, and
basically what we're doing with Neighbours and Kylie Minogue. They're bringing her back for the final episode.
I've no idea, but okay. That's what I would do with Susan, but still bring her back because it's such a huge moment to make every Doctor Who fan cry. And it's amazing it's not happened.
Thing about Doctor Who is it's never going to be cancelled, so we can't bookend it like that. Even if it does get cancelled, it's going to come back in like 10 years anyway.
Yeah, but still, conclude her story.
Yeah. Also, they have brought Susan back in the audio dramas. The 8th Doctor goes back to visit her again, and she becomes involved in a time war.
It's not the same, is it? It's not the same.
No.
I forget where we were in this episode. What happened? Okay, so the Doctor is chatting with the lady, then he goes off to go see the Professor and his big machine. And the Professor uses his machine to translate this inscription thing, and it says something about the Curse of Fenric. It's like, the Curse of Fenric is here, ha ha ha.
Let the chains of Fenric shatter.
Yeah. And, the Professor is like so ecstatic that it's translating what these things means, and the Doctor's like, well, it translates it into English. It doesn't tell you what it means, which I think was just a nice little bit of wordplay there. And then we cut back to some very spooky looking girls in the water.
Oh boy, yes. We certainly need Renale's cut, that's for sure.
So, the spooky vampire girls are in the water, and they're luring the Russian soldier who's come back for some reason. Why did he come back?
Because he's drawn to the woman.
But he ran away from the beach. Why wouldn't he just go back to his men? Why would he come back to the water?
I don't know.
Yeah, but he's back at the water.
Because the ladies are attractive and wet. What else are you going to do?
I don't know. And they start luring him in with like a siren call, essentially. They're like hypnotizing him, like, oh, the water's so warm and lovely. Nobody's going to grab you and kill you. And he gets hypnotized, comes into the water. Lo and behold, a bunch of zombie people. They look like water zombies, essentially.
Yes, they're actually vampires, water vampires, but we'll get to them more in the later on in the episode.
Yeah, and they all grab him and pull him into the ocean, and he is dead, and it is a cry and shame, although I couldn't tell you which one he was.
Yeah, one problem with this episode, there's too many characters, too many Russian soldiers. I don't know any of them apart from
the main one.
Yeah, Ace's boyfriend. But yeah, the lady's fingernails, ridiculous. I really hate this. It's like one finger.
Doesn't
it's like
me.
It's the most memorable thing I have from this episode from when I watched it for the first time in like 2007. Just the nails are just so dumb.
They're like, I think it's like a fun monster design, It's like a vampire's long nails. Sure, why not,
It gets worse when there's more people with long nails, in my opinion. But yeah, this scene almost had to be reshot when a member of the public started pestering the crew by singing Doctor in the TARDIS, which had been released the year before, but it turned out they were able to remove his singing in post-production. So yeah, do you know that song, Doctor in the TARDIS?
Is it anything like Doctor in Distress?
I wish. But yeah, it's basically the Gary Glitter song.
Oh,
Rock and Roll. The one I was played in Joker? It's that song, but with the lyrics, Doctor Who, hey.
I forgot that Joker played a Gary Glitter song.
That's the one thing from Joker that really took me out of Joker. I'm like, am I fucking listening to Gary Glitter in the cinema right now?
Yeah. Good film, though.
Surely the person who chose that song knew about Gary Glitter, right?
Maybe they thought that it's era appropriate for the year it's set. Gary Glitter would have been playing music. He would have been at the top of whatever thing. And the Joker's this deprived guy. So maybe he's attracted to degenerates like Gary Glitter.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah.
Gary Glitter and Doctor Who. That's what we're talking about now.
Yeah. But the we then cut to the Doctor, Ace, and the Professor sitting in his room. The Doctor's like, "Oh, I have to go, by the way." Whoa. And he leaves the room very quick, leaving just Ace and the Professor in the room. And the Professor starts shouting at the Doctor, being like, "Yeah, shut up, stop making noise," because she's playing with the logic toy.
At Ace. We call her the Doctor.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, same difference. And the Ace is like, "Yeah, no, it's like I figured out what this inscription thing is, and what it means." And the Professor's like, "Yeah, I already know what it means. It's the Fenric thing that we've said earlier on." And she's like, no, it's a logic puzzle. It's for a really complex computer. Look at it. It's this really complicated thing. And the Professor just immediately believes her. And he's like, "Oh my God, you're right. Take me back to my computer machine, Crane. You're standing in the corner facing the wall, I guess, because you're not doing anything in the scene." And he gets wheeled out of the room. And then Ace makes a comment like, wherever she's from in London, 200 million points or something, rest of the universe nil, which I just didn't get. I was like,
I don't really get it myself, but also, I think the idea of Ace solving the puzzle is such a great moment because it reminds me of Tomb of the Cybermen, where Patrick Troughton's Doctor figures out a math puzzle and accidentally reveals it, because where everybody in Tomb of the Cybermen is trying to figure out these logic puzzles, trying to get through to the next room of the tombs. And yeah, it's such a great moment because it shows that Ace is actually really smart. She failed chemistry exams and did poorly in school, but she's really smart at the same time, which is really interesting.
Learns from hands-on experience traveling with the Doctor rather than through textbooks. Yeah.
And if the show was going to go on, we apparently were going to make Ace like a future Time Lord. Like that's what the Doctor was prepping her for, which would have been very interesting. I think I'm not sure if
Time Lord.
if human Time Lords are a thing, but I'm not sure if Big Finish or if the novels ever got a hold of this storyline. But I'd be interested.
I'm not familiar. I've not heard anything about it. But to be fair, I've not heard anything about human Time Lords either.
Well, technically, River Song is a human Time Lord. I'm not really sure.
Well, she has regeneration powers, but she doesn't have them. She only had like small ones because
Time Lords aren't actually a species.
They're
Gallifreyans are a species.
Yeah. Time Lords are a rank in their caste society that they live in.
Yeah.
But I think I was listening to Nerd Cubed describe River Song, and he was like, River Song is this beautiful story where she's this daughter of Amy and Rory, and she gets taken away from them and gets given Time Lord regeneration of powers. Forget about that part. And then she she goes, because that part one doesn't make sense in canon anymore. And although does it make more sense with the Timeless Child, because
you're right, yeah.
But it's like Matt Smith's regeneration doesn't make sense anymore because he only regenerates because the Time Lords came back and gave him a whole new set of 13 regenerations. Whereas
Doctor Who canon just breaks my brain at this point.
Yeah.
There's so much in the canon right now. And we're not even talking about books, because books introduced a new canon where apparently people are Time Lords like woven or something. There's a whole book called Lung Barrow which explains the Time Lord origins, which isn't canon anymore or never was to begin with. But yeah, it'll be a fun one to cover someday.
Yeah. But back to the episode. We then cut to the old lady who has just been annoying and has had very pointless scenes. As she's like doing something, and then the two girls come back in a jump scare vampire, and they very slowly corner this lady, and then extremely slowly arch over her. "Oh, we're going to kill you!" And the camera and the shots linger just that one moment too long, where you're like, "Ooh, this is awkward."
Yeah, they basically arch over her for like 3 seconds when it could have just been 1 second.
Yeah. And then the Doctor and Ace are suddenly together, and they're outside the house. Have I missed a scene? It's
Yeah, I don't think there's anything in the extended cut that really explains how the Doctor and Ace got back together.
And how they know to go to this house. It seems like a sudden jump in time that we've missed out some stuff, but yeah.
But we do see John Nathan Turner's dog in the background called Pepsi.
Is that who it is? Is that who it is?
Yes.
Yeah. Just very briefly, at the corner of the frame, you see a wee golden retriever running about having a good time, and yeah, it's a little bit distracting. I didn't notice it my first time, but I did this time. Why is that dog not on a lead?
I don't know. I feel sorry for it because it's going to get eaten by a vampire soon.
Very slowly as well. But the Doctor and Ace go into the house. They start like looking around it. There's a record player on loop. Doctor Who movie joke here. And they they find the dead body of the lady, and the Doctor's like, oh, all her blood's gone. It's like that Russian soldier we saw earlier. Must be vampires.
The nurse did it because she's a vampire in Smith and Jones. She sucks the Doctor's blood for a straw.
It's all connected. Smith and Jones is a pseudo sequel to the Curse of Fenric. You're right. Yeah. So, the episode continues with the vampires approaching the priest who's standing out in, I think it must be the graveyard or something, where the vampire girls approach him, and he's like, I know you guys are vampires, but you shouldn't exist. Stay away from me. This Bible is going to kill you. And there's this really great conversation with the vampires where they're like, the book of the Bible isn't what kills us. It's human belief in it that kills us, and you have no belief because of the bombs, and not German bombs but British bombs dropped on German children. That's this really great scene where you're understanding all the things about this vicar are coming into once, and I really like that explanation of vampire lore. I thought that was a clever wee tool to use. It doesn't explain why they're standing in sunlight, but I guess these vampires can stay in sunlight no matter what.
Yeah, they are what they are.
Yeah, these are like ocean vampires, I guess. These are actually underwater vampires based on Alan Moore's creatures in Swamp Thing. Alan Moore, of course, is a comic book writer from Watchmen. He's also a part-time wizard. He is. Yep. Thankfully, not a part-time wizard in the Ku Klux Klan, though.
Thank God.
But then suddenly the Doctor and Ace show up again. How do they know where the the vicar's in danger? How do they know where he is? How do they know where the vampires are? They've got this sudden teleportation beacon where they're just jumping around the area. And the Doctor just kind of shouts at the vampires. He's like, no, you will not hurt him. And the vampires go, fine, we won't hurt him, but we'll hurt him later on. And they just kind of walk. Why don't the vampires kill everybody? Why did they bother listening to the Doctor right now? Why didn't they just attack the vicar after they said their thing? I don't get it. I don't understand. Part
of it is that we can't really... I don't know. It gets confusing in a way.
Because it makes no sense.
Because I presume it's because the Doctor and Ace have faith in something. Because that's the whole theme of the episode. Everybody has faith, and we can't be attacked if they have faith.
I guess.
I'm not sure if that applies to the vampire girls, because they're a different vampire than the underwater vampires. Because there's two breeds of vampires here. It's very confusing.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. Yeah, so we go back to the professor and the big computer room where they're working on the machine. Milton's like, "Come on, let's get this machine going." Start. I think they're working out the logic puzzle that Ace told them about, which is start sending the machine, haywire. Then we cut to the woods, and the Doctor, the Vicar, and Ace are walking through the woods in what you described as a student film.
Yeah, because obviously the cameraman is walking backwards. The camera is very shaky because there's no stabilizer on the camera or anything. It just feels like a student film. The great color gradiness and great either.
Feels like they didn't plan out the shot and they went, "We've just got to get this. We'll do it in a oneer. We'll make it a tracking shot. Go."
That's entirely possible because this thing was shot in 19 days.
Yeah, there is one good shot in the woods, which is when it stops moving and Sylvester McCoy's on one side, the Vicar's on the other, and Ace is in the middle in the background. That's a nice little shot there. But
yeah, Ace in the background is like, "Oh, you should have told me. I just gave him the answer."
Yeah, because
such a great moment.
The Doctor says that as long as the Professor doesn't figure out that the thing is a computer code, like an inscription, then he's going to be safe from harm. And Ace is like, "Oh, well, something you should know."
Again, I just love the idea of a companion not being quite ahead of the curve in terms of what the Doctor is planning.
Like they figured out the puzzle, but they didn't.
Yeah.
They don't know, the everything yet.
Yeah, they're smart enough to be helpful in terms of helping Dr. Judson, but they don't know they're not being helpful.
Yeah,
in terms
they don't know
of raising the dead.
they don't know the danger of the information they have.
Yes.
Yeah. They just know they have information. Then we're suddenly watching the Sea Devils. As we're watching the vampire zombie people come up from the ocean. It's not a bad looking costume, but it is the exact same shot from the Sea Devils.
Yeah, so these actors had to submerge themselves underwater. They couldn't hear the director shout action, which sounds familiar from the Sea Devils.
Mm-hmm.
And they had to be weighed down by rocks, and water filled their masks. Which, again, just what happened on the Sea Devils. You can't really have actors be underwater like that.
Oh, you can. But they did it twice.
But yeah, they didn't want to use the name vampires for these creatures, so they come up with the name herbivores instead, which literally mean blood eaters, which is quite grim.
That's cool. That's a cool wee name. As that's happening, the Doctor and Ace run into the machine room where it's running at, quote, 4 times maximum speed, which is a lovely bit of thing that doesn't make sense, as the machine's going absolutely haywire. Whatever information is this thing is going to do is going to cause a lot of harm. The Doctor's like, we've got to turn it off, Ace, turn it off. She's like, I can't get to the power switch. Everybody starts pulling on it, and Milton's like, it's done, Doctor. There's no stopping what's about to happen. And then cue music, cut to the credits. The Doctor's about to die again.
Yeah, the thing about this cliffhanger is the cliffhangers in the late 80s dumped the idea of setting up the villain and instead wanted to focus on the Doctor's reaction. So if this was a 1970s episode, we would have focused on the cliffhanger being the herbivores rising up from the water, but instead it's like, oh no, the cliffhanger is the Doctor is worried because it's too late to stop this thing from happening, which in my opinion is a better cliffhanger.
Yeah, mainly because the thing, I have no care about the vampires at all. I'm not interested in their storyline.
Yeah, because herbivores rising up from the water is like, okay, that's going to be a danger later on, because we're just right in the middle of nowhere. There's nobody around really. We're going to attack somebody in like 5 minutes, but it's not an immediate danger. Whereas it being too late to stop anything from happening is a great one, because it's like, oh my god, what's the Doctor going to do now?
Yeah. This is it's an interesting story because there is just so much going on.
I'll use this analogy. There's a lot of moving chess pieces.
Got to burn it. Burn this episode. But that is the end of episode 2, which brings us to the end of this episode of the podcast, Scott. So, what did you think about the story so far with parts 1 and 2?
So this story in general isn't my favourite story ever of Doctor Who, but, I think it's a great example of Doctor Who, near the end of its run. Like, this show is off the air in 4 weeks' time, and they're still trying their best in terms of writing. They're still doing some deep themes. We're actually trying to give companion character work, and we'll see more character work within the next 2 parts. It's a pretty decent setup for the next story, I think.
Yeah, I have to say I enjoyed this story, these 2 episodes, much more my second time watching it. The first time it didn't really grip me. Second time, able to focus a lot more on the better performances in the somewhat muddy story that it's setting up. I think the Vicar gives a good performance. I really like Milton as a villain. I think he's giving a really strong performance, and Sylvester McCoy and Sophie Aldred are excellent together. Very much enjoying their chemistry. As my first experience with the 7th Doctor, besides, of course, the Doctor Who movie where, he drinks some tea and gets shot, I'm very much enjoying it. I think he's a very good Doctor. Yet to see a Doctor that doesn't impress me pretty early on, I think really only, like, even Jodie's Doctor, I liked her early on. She didn't super impress me, and she's never had her, quote-unquote Doctor moment, but I don't think we've had a bad incarnation yet. We still haven't covered the 6th and the 1st Doctor.
We haven't done that yet.
And 6 is supposed to be the worst Doctor, but we'll see if that holds up. The clips I've seen from him, he's pretty excellent. So, You know?
The thing is about choosing a worst doctor, I think there is no bad performance, so it's impossible to choose the worst doctor. And I think it's my favorite doctor is the third Doctor, but I think it's hard to pinpoint my second favorite Doctor because it's like Sylvester McCoy is so excellent. Tennant is so good.
I have a hard job choosing my first favorite Doctor, because I love, I love Matt Smith. I love Capaldi. I love, oh my God, what's his name? I clearly don't love him that much. Movie Doctor.
Paul McGann.
That's it. Yeah, I love Paul McGann. Those are the three names. I love David Tennant, obviously. I've not had too much exposure for the classic Doctors. I've seen a few of their stories. I've seen a lot of the first Doctor. And the more I see him, the less I actually like his performance. It's I have a hard time choosing my favorite Doctor, but that's just because I'm indecisive, I think.
But in terms of Curse of Fenric, it's trying mature storylines. It's dark for Doctor Who.
It's very dark, yeah.
Doctor Who is often a dark show, but, this is thematically dark about losing faith in times of war, which is really depressing subject matter, and I think the storyline is trying really interesting things with it.
Yeah, I think it's good, and I'm interested to see where. Obviously, you've seen episodes 3 and 4. I have not seen episodes 3 and 4 yet. I will by next week, and I can't wait to be disappointed by this story. I can't wait for it to go off the rails and do something completely ridiculous, and for it to get really bad. I'm on board, ready for that to happen.
Well, obviously, I know where it's going to end up, and I'm not sure if you're going to like some parts of it. It kind of does get ridiculous, kind of not. But we'll get to that next week, obviously.
Excellent. But in the meantime, you can send us an email on your thoughts on The Curse of Fenric if you've ever seen this, or your thoughts on anything Doctor Who related by sending us an email at whowatcheswhopod@gmail.com. We read all our emails out at the end of the month in our monthly news episode.
And also Mathew sends you a picture of himself.
I do also send you a picture of my face. Not off myself, don't get too excited. At whowatcheswhopod@gmail.com. That is our email address. Please send us an email, we're lovely. In the meantime, you can follow us on Facebook at Who Watches Who, on Twitter at Watches Doctor. This podcast is on YouTube on Who Watches Who and is available in audio form wherever you listen to your podcasts. Follow me on Twitter at Cloth223. And anything else here, Scott, what we got coming up?
We'll be back next week for the last two parts of the story, and then the week after we're doing Doctor Who and the Daleks with Peter Cushing, so that's something to look forward to.
Yeah, lots of stuff on the go.
With Peter Cushing, we're finally out of the fucking water, my dude.
Oh my God. It has been a long sail through these water-themed episodes. We've done so many of them. But yes, we will see you next week. Bye-bye.